The Force binds all things across the galaxy, connecting every living being in an invisible web of energy and destiny. But what happens when beings arrive who possess power without midichlorians, strength without the Force's touch, abilities born from evolution rather than cosmic energy? What happens when mutation meets the mythic? The dimensional rift tore through reality like a lightsaber through Durasteel. One moment, the X-Men were defending their school against an interdimensional incursion, Cerebro amplifying Professor Xavier's abilities to unprecedented levels. The next, space-time fractured. The world became a kaleidoscope of impossible colors, a screaming silence that felt like falling through stars. Then, nothing. Professor Charles Xavier's eyes opened to unfamiliar constellations. His telepathic senses, usually a comfort, screamed with overwhelming stimulus, millions upon millions of minds pressing against his consciousness like a tidal wave. He gasped, immediately erecting mental shields, but the sheer density of sentient thought was unlike anything Earth had ever produced. Beside him, Jean Grey groaned, her red hair splayed across strange metallic debris, her own telepathy clearly struggling with the same assault. Jean, Xavier projected, his mental voice strained. "Can you hear me? Professor, where are we? I can hear billions of voices. So many minds, but they feel different. There's something else here. Something vast and..." She trailed off, eyes widening as she stared at the cityscape rising around them. They had crashed into what appeared to be a landing platform on the upper levels of the most impossibly massive city Xavier had ever conceived. Buildings stretched endlessly in every direction, disappearing into atmospheric haze. Flying vehicles, speeders, he would later learn, zipped past at impossible speeds, their repulsor engines humming with technology far beyond Earth's capabilities. The sky above showed not one sun, but the glow of a planetary capital lit by trillions of lights. This was Coruscant, jewel of the Galactic Republic, though the X-Men could not yet know this. Xavier's wheelchair, remarkably intact despite their violent arrival, activated with a thought. His telepathy reached outward carefully, sampling the nearest minds. Human-like thoughts mixed with utterly alien cognitive patterns. He sensed urgency, purpose, and underlying everything, a strange energy he couldn't quite identify. It felt almost like Jean's telekinesis, but ambient, environmental, as if the very fabric of space here possessed consciousness. "Professor, we're not alone," Jean said, rising to her feet. Her green eyes tracked movement in the shadows of their crash site. 3 figures emerged from the platform's archway. They wore robes of earth tones, browns and tans, and moved with a fluid grace that suggested either martial training or enhanced physiology. 2 were human-appearing, 1 male and 1 female. The third was an alien species Xavier had no reference for, orange skin, white facial markings, and strange head tails that seemed to move independently. All 3 had cylindrical weapons hanging from their belts, metallic hilts that seemed ceremonial yet purposeful. The lead figure, a bearded human man with calm, penetrating eyes, raised one hand in a peaceful gesture. "Peace, strangers. I am Jedi Master Plo Koon. You have arrived at the Jedi Temple on Coruscant. Your vessel's crash was detected, though our sensors registered no ship." His voice carried authority tempered with genuine curiosity. Xavier felt the man's mind, disciplined, centered, radiating what could only be described as serenity despite the questions clearly burning within. But when Xavier's telepathy brushed the surface of that consciousness, something unexpected happened. The Jedi Master's eyes widened slightly, and Xavier felt a responsive touch, not telepathic in the way he understood it, but something analogous. A probing presence that felt like conscious energy. "Fascinating," Xavier said aloud, switching to verbal communication. "You possess some form of telepathic awareness, Master Plo Koon, though not quite like ours. I am Professor Charles Xavier, and this is Jean Grey. We appear to have been transported here through circumstances beyond our control." The female Jedi, a Togruta Xavier's mind supplied by sampling nearby thoughts, stepped forward. "The Force is strong around you both," yet different. You touch minds as we might, but without the Force's guidance. This is unprecedented. Her montrals, the horn-like protrusions, twitched slightly, as if sensing vibrations Xavier couldn't perceive. Jean's telekinesis flared instinctively, lifting several pieces of debris in a gentle orbit around her. We need to find our teammates. We weren't alone when we arrived. There were others. The debris clattered down as Jean's concentration broke, her mind reaching out desperately across the planetary surface. Xavier joined her, their combined telepathic sweep radiating outward. They found them, scattered signatures that felt like home. Logan's feral, determined consciousness somewhere distant. Storm's serene yet powerful presence on another world entirely. Cyclops, rogue, and beast together but far from Coruscant. And Magneto. Eric's mind burned with intensity somewhere in the galactic periphery. They're alive, Jean breathed. But scattered across planets. Professor, this isn't just another country or continent. We're talking about an entire galaxy, Xavier finished quietly. Yes, Jean. I believe we're very far from home indeed. The third Jedi, the human male, activated a communication device. Master Windu, we have a situation in the temple's upper landing zones. Two beings claiming dimensional displacement. Their abilities appear force-sensitive, but the signatures are anomalous. Requesting council presence. Xavier and Jean exchanged glances. They had faced gods, demons, and cosmic entities. They had battled prejudice, hatred, and fear across Earth. But now, stranded in an alien galaxy during what their telepathic scans suggested was a massive interstellar war, they faced their greatest challenge yet, survival in a universe that operated by completely different rules. The Force swirled around the Jedi, invisible to normal sight but perceptible to Xavier's evolved mind as a kind of luminous energy field. It connected every living thing on this planet and beyond, a cosmic network that reminded him eerily of Cerebro's function but on an unfathomably larger scale. The question burning in his mind was simple yet terrifying: could mutant powers coexist with this force, or were the X-Men an anomaly that would destabilize everything they touched? Above Coruscant, a Republic Venator-class star destroyer passed through the upper atmosphere, its wedge-shaped hull blotting out a section of sky. Somewhere in its command center, Clone Commander Cody reviewed reports of unusual energy signatures across multiple systems. The war against the Separatists consumed every resource, every strategic calculation. Neither he nor his Jedi generals could know that a far stranger conflict was about to emerge, one that questioned the very nature of power itself. Xavier allowed himself to be escorted toward the Jedi Temple proper, Jean at his side. His mind raced with possibilities and dangers. The X-Men had fought for coexistence between mutants and humans for years. Now they would need to navigate the politics of a galactic civilization, reunite their scattered team, and somehow find a way home, all while a war raged around them. The Force had brought many unexpected things to the galaxy. But it had never encountered mutation. And mutation had never encountered the Force. If you want to see more characters enter the Star Wars galaxy, hit that subscribe button and drop the name of a character you'd want to see in the comments below. May the Force be with you. The Jedi Council chamber occupied the highest spire of the temple, a circular room with panoramic views of Coruscant's endless cityscape. 12 seats arranged in a circle, most currently occupied by holographic projections of Jedi Masters scattered across the galaxy's war-torn systems. Master Yoda sat in contemplative silence, his ancient eyes fixed on the two newcomers with an intensity that suggested he perceived far more than their physical forms. Xavier and Jean stood at the chamber's center, acutely aware they were being assessed by some of the most powerful beings this galaxy had ever produced. The telepathic presence of the assembled Jedi created a harmonious resonance that Xavier found both beautiful and slightly overwhelming, like listening to a cosmic choir singing in a language he almost understood but couldn't quite translate. Professor Charles Xavier and Jean Grey, Mace Windu stated, his deep voice carrying the weight of authority. The dark-skinned Jedi Master leaned forward slightly, his bald head catching the light streaming through the chamber's tall windows. You claim to have arrived through a dimensional breach. Explain the nature of your abilities and your purpose here. Xavier inclined his head respectfully. Master Windu, we are what our world calls mutants, humans born with genetic variations that grant extraordinary abilities. My gift is telepathy. I can read thoughts, communicate mentally, and when necessary, influence minds. Jean Grey possesses both telepathy and telekinesis. We lead a group dedicated to fostering peaceful coexistence between mutants and baseline humans. Mutants, a holographic Jedi, Ki-Adi-Mundi, his tall cranium distinctive, repeated thoughtfully. Genetic evolution granting abilities. Yet we sense no midichlorians generating these powers. How is this possible? Jean spoke up, her voice steady despite the intimidating assembly. We don't know what midichlorians are. Our abilities come from the X gene. A mutation in our DNA that activates during adolescence. We're not connecting to an external energy field, the power is intrinsic to our biology. The chamber fell silent. Xavier felt the ripple of confusion and fascination spreading through the assembled minds. To these Jedi, the Force was omnipresent, it connected all living things, guided destiny itself. The concept of power existing independently of the Force seemed to challenge their fundamental understanding of the universe. Yoda's ears twitched. Strong in the Force, you are not. Yet power you possess, undeniable this is. A disturbance in the cosmic order, your arrival may be. Or perhaps. The ancient Jedi Master's eyes gleamed. A reminder that vast is the universe, and limited our understanding remains. Masters, Shock Ti's hologram interjected, if these abilities are genetic rather than Force-derived, could there be others of their kind in our galaxy? Undiscovered populations with similar evolutionary advantages? Xavier seized the opening. That's our immediate concern. Our team was scattered during the dimensional breach. At least 6 others arrived with us, spread across your galaxy. We need to locate and reunite with them before they're mistaken for threats and engaged by Republic or Separatist forces. Obi-Wan Kenobi finished, his hologram stroking his beard thoughtfully. A reasonable concern. We've detected several unusual energy signatures across multiple systems in the past standard hour. ProfessorX, Mandalore, and Ryloth have all reported anomalies. PLO Kun, standing at the chamber's edge, added, one signature on Mandalore was particularly aggressive. Initial reports suggest a being with retractable metal blades engaged a clan hunting party. 3 Mandalorians hospitalized, but notably, none killed despite the being's apparent advantages. Wolverine. Xavier recognized Logan's restrained violence immediately, dangerous enough to make a point. Controlled enough to avoid unnecessary death. That would be Logan, one of our team. He has a regenerative healing factor and an indestructible metal skeleton with retractable claws. He's temperamental, but ultimately honorable. Indestructible metal. Mace Windu's interest sharpened. What material? Adamantium. A metal alloy from our universe. Jean gestured helplessly. We don't know if it exists here or if our equipment and enhancements even function by the same physical laws as your galaxy. Kit Fisto's hologram smiled, his green head tails swaying. Testing will answer those questions. The real issue is diplomatic. Mandalore operates with significant autonomy. If this Logan has engaged their warriors, Duchess Satine will demand explanations we cannot provide. Masters, Xavier projected calm authority, our primary goal is reunification with our team and finding a way home. We have no interest in your war or politics. However, we understand our presence creates complications. What do you propose? The question hung in the air. Through his telepathy, Xavier sensed the Council's divided thoughts. Some, like Yoda and PLO Kun, radiated curiosity and cautious welcome. Others, including Mace Windu, emanated wariness, not hostility, but the strategic caution of leaders managing an already overwhelming crisis. The Clone Wars stretched Jedi resources thin. Unknown variables, however fascinating, represented potential liabilities. Assign them a liaison, Obi-Wan suggested. Someone to help navigate Republic space and vouch for them while we investigate these other arrivals. Anakin and I are scheduled to return to Coruscant within the cycle. We could coordinate the search. Too valuable for retrieval missions, General Skywalker is, Yoda countered. Needed on the front lines, both of you are. Another solution, we must find. Before further debate could occur, an alarm pulsed through the chamber, soft but urgent. A clone officer's voice crackled over the comm system, alert to Jedi Council. Separatist fleet has engaged Republic forces over Ryloth. General Windu and General Kenobi, your presence is requested immediately. The holographic Jedi flickered with sudden tension. Mace Windu stood, his hand instinctively moving to his lightsaber hilt. The Twi'lek resistance needs support. We'll continue this discussion when circumstances permit. He focused on Xavier and Jean. You'll remain in the temple as guests, not prisoners, but under observation. Temple Guard will ensure your security and our own. Understood, Xavier agreed. Though I should mention, one of our team members, Aurora Monroe, arrived on what your database indicates is a Separatist-controlled world. If your forces engage there. Storm. Jean interrupted, her telepathy reaching desperately across space again. Professor, I can barely sense her, but something's wrong. There are thousands of minds around her, terrified minds, and she's in the center of it all. Obi-Wan's hologram leaned closer. Which world? Jean concentrated, Xavier lending his strength to the telepathic search. Together they sifted through the cacophony of billions of minds across Coruscant, filtering for that one familiar consciousness. I see, manufacturing facilities. Droid factories. The people are enslaved, forced labor. The planet's name in the guard's thoughts is Mandalorian. The council chamber's atmosphere shifted immediately. Even through holographic transmission, Xavier felt the spike of concern. Mandalorian is a separatist fortress world, Ki-Adi-Mundi stated grimly. The population was enslaved months ago to produce battle droids. We've attempted 3 liberation efforts. All failed. If your companion is there, then she's in extreme danger, Mace Windu finished. Separatist security will detect her immediately. General Skywalker, change of plans. You and Commander Tano will investigate Mandalorian. If this storm is as powerful as you claim, the Separatists will either kill her or attempt to weaponize her. Xavier's jaw tightened. Aurora was one of the most compassionate X-Men, a woman who wielded godlike weather powers with profound responsibility. But in a war zone, surrounded by enslaved innocents and droid armies, would she remain neutral? Or would her heroic nature compel her to act, potentially drawing the full wrath of the Separatist military? We should accompany your forces, Jean insisted. Storm trusts us. She'll listen to us. Impossible, Shock T replied. Your unknown variables without combat clearance or understanding of our warfare protocols. You would endanger the mission. Then you'll endanger Storm, Xavier countered, his voice hardening with the tone he used when fighting for his students' lives. She possesses the ability to generate hurricanes, summon lightning, and control atmospheric conditions across entire regions. If she perceives your forces as threats to innocent civilians, she will defend them. Can your military survive a living weather goddess who believes she's protecting the helpless? The silence that followed was weighted with calculation. Finally, Yoda spoke, a point, Professor Xavier makes. Accompany General Skywalker, you may. But understand, in a war zone, follow orders you must. Endanger clone troopers with recklessness, and reconsidered our hospitality will be. Xavier nodded once. Acceptable. As the council session dissolved, Jedi dispersing to their respective assignments, Jean touched Xavier's arm mentally. Asterisk Professor, are we making the right choice? Getting involved in their war? Asterisk. We're not choosing sides, Jean, asterisk Xavier projected back. Asterisk we're choosing Aurora. The X-Men protect their own. Once we're reunited, then we decide our path forward, asterisk. But even as he thought it, Xavier wondered. The Force users seemed honorable, their cause noble. Yet something nagged at his telepathic senses. A shadow he couldn't quite perceive, a wrongness lurking beneath Coruscant's gleaming surface. This galaxy had secrets, and the X-Men had just stepped into a conflict far more complex than the simple heroism they were accustomed to. Somewhere across the stars, Wolverine was earning Mandalorian respect through violence. Storm stood surrounded by slaves and droids, unaware rescue was coming. Magneto plotted in the Outer Rim's lawless territories. And the scattered X-Men, for the first time in their lives, were truly alone in a universe that didn't understand them. The Force swirled through the temple, ancient and patient. But mutation cared nothing for patience. Evolution was coming to the Star Wars galaxy, whether the Force was ready or not. The Mandalorian homeworld's moon of Concordia was a place of harsh beauty, jagged mountains, deep forests, and scattered settlements that valued tradition over comfort. Logan had awakened in one of those forests, his healing factor already working to repair whatever damage the dimensional transit had inflicted. His senses, sharper than any baseline humans, immediately catalogued threats, unfamiliar scents, distant mechanical sounds, and the unmistakable presence of armed warriors moving through the trees. He'd barely taken 3 steps before the first energy bolt seared past his head. "Stay where you are, intruder." The voice came from somewhere above. Logan's enhanced hearing triangulated the source, 3 contacts, elevated positions, military discipline in their movements. Logan's claws extended with their characteristic snicked, adamantium gleaming in the filtered sunlight. Not a great way to welcome visitors, bub. 3 armored figures descended from the trees with jetpack-assisted grace. Their armor was unlike anything Logan had seen, metallic plates painted in clan colors, T-visored helmets that betrayed no emotion, and an array of weapons that suggested these warriors took combat very seriously. The lead figure, armor decorated with blue accents and a distinctive sigil, raised a blaster rifle. "Weapons that emerge from your body," the Mandalorian observed, his voice filtered through his helmet's vocoder. "Cybernetic enhancements or biological mutation?" "Biological," Logan growled. "And they don't come out unless I'm planning to use them. Lower your weapons, and we can talk." "Talk." The Mandalorian's helmet tilted slightly. "You've trespassed on Concordia during a time of internal conflict. The new Mandalorians seek to erase our warrior culture. Those of us who remain true to the old ways must be cautious of spies and saboteurs." Logan retracted one set of claws as a gesture of good faith, keeping the other extended. His feral instincts screamed that these warriors respected strength, not submission. "I'm not part of your politics. I'm lost, separated from my team, and trying to figure out where the hell I am. You want to help, great. You want to fight, I've got 300 pounds of attitude and an indestructible skeleton that says I'll be standing long after you're not." The lead Mandalorian's posture shifted, subtle, but Logan caught it. "Respect, or at least interest. You speak like a warrior. Very well. Lower your claws, and accompany us to our camp. Clan Vizsla will determine what to do with you." "Clan Vizsla, huh?" Logan retracted his remaining claws. "Lead on." The Mandalorian camp was a fortified position carved into the mountainside, temporary but professional. Warriors in armor sparred in training circles while others maintained weapons and equipment with meticulous care. Logan's arrival caused immediate attention, conversation stopping as visored helmets turned to assess the newcomer. The clan leader, Vizsla, was a tall man who removed his helmet to reveal a scarred face and calculating eyes. He held a weapon unlike any blaster Logan had seen, a black-bladed sword that hummed with energy, its edge surrounded by an electromagnetic field. "I am Vizsla, leader of the Death Watch. My warriors tell me you claim to be lost and possess retractable metal blades. Demonstrate. Logan extended his claws again, the adamantium catching the camp's firelight. Satisfied? Vizslas' eyes widened fractionally. Beskar. Adamantium. Different metal, same idea, indestructible. Logan studied the darksaber in Vizslas' hand. That thing looks like it could cut through just about anything. The darksaber is a Jedi weapon, claimed by my ancestor and passed down through our clan. It symbolizes leadership, strength. Vizsla activated the blade fully, its black energy humming with restrained power. Your metal blades are impressive, but untested. Among Mandalorians, a warrior proves their worth through combat. Logan's lips curved into something that wasn't quite a smile. You want to test my claws against your fancy sword? I've fought ninjas, demons, and gods. I'll try not to embarrass you in front of your people. The camp erupted in murmurs. Vizslas' expression hardened. You have spirit. Let's see if you have skill to match. The training circle cleared instantly. Mandalorians gathered around the perimeter, some placing bets in their guttural language. Logan rolled his shoulders, his healing factor already compensating for the lingering disorientation from dimensional travel. He'd fought in more styles than he could count across more than a century of violence. These warriors valued honor and strength, good. Those were languages Logan spoke fluently. Vizsla attacked without preamble, the darksaber slicing through the air with practiced precision. Logan parried with crossed claws, adamantium meeting plasma-edged energy in a shower of sparks. The impact sent vibrations up Logan's arms, but the claws held. No damage, no weakness. Adamantium didn't care what universe it was in, indestructible meant indestructible. Impressive, Vizsla admitted, circling. Your metal endures against a lightsaber blade. But can you? The Mandalorian leader activated his jetpack, launching upward and coming down with an overhead strike. Logan rolled aside, claws raking across Vizslas' armor in passing. The Beskar held, but the screech of adamantium on Mandalorian iron sent a clear message: Logan could hurt him if he wanted to. The fight continued, a brutal dance of blade work and tactical movement. Logan's healing factor meant he could take risks Vizsla couldn't. A graze from the darksaber across his shoulder healed before the wound could fully register. But Logan kept the fight honorable, avoiding lethal strikes, demonstrating skill rather than simply overwhelming his opponent with his mutant advantages. Finally, Logan trapped the darksaber between his claws and held, the black blade inches from his face. We done measuring, bub? Or do you need more convincing that I'm not your enemy? Vizsla deactivated the blade and stepped back, breathing hard. Around the circle, Mandalorians nodded with approval. You fight with honor and restraint, killing could have been easy for you, but you chose not to. This is the Mandalorian way. He extended his hand. You are no longer an intruder. You are a guest of Clan Vizsla. Logan retracted his claws and clasped the offered hand. Logan. Or Wolverine, if you prefer the code name. I need information about this place, and I need to find my team. They're scattered across planets. This whole setup is still hard to wrap my head around. Vizsla led Logan to a tactical display, a holographic projection showing star systems, trade routes, and military positions. You stand on Concordia, moon of Mandalore, in the Outer Rim territories of the Galactic Republic. A war rages between the Republic and the Separatist Alliance. Millions die while the Jedi Knights serve as generals for an army of clones. Logan's enhanced senses detected the bitterness in Vizslas' tone. You don't like the Jedi. The Jedi betrayed Mandalore centuries ago. They claim to be peacekeepers but serve politicians. They wield the Force as though it makes them superior to those who achieve greatness through discipline and training alone. Vizsla zoomed the display to Coruscant. Your team, you said they were scattered. The Jedi Temple is there. If your companions possess unusual abilities, the Jedi will find them. Or imprison them. The professor can handle himself, Logan muttered. But doubt gnawed at him. Xavier's telepathy was powerful, but in a galaxy of trillions. And the others, Scott, Rogue, Hank, they were skilled, but this wasn't their world. They didn't know the players, the politics, or the dangers. A Mandalorian scout approached, speaking rapidly in Mandoe. Vizslaw's expression darkened. It seems your presence hasn't gone unnoticed. Republic sensors detected the energy signature of your arrival. They're dispatching a ship to investigate, likely Jedi. Logan's jaw tightened. I don't want trouble with anyone. I just want to find my people and figure out how to get home. Then you have a choice, Wolverine. Vizslaw deactivated the hologram. Wait here for the Republic to arrive, likely be detained and questioned by the Jedi. Or travel with Death Watch. We operate outside Republic control, answering to no one but Mandalorian honor. With us, you would have freedom to search for your companions without government interference. The offer was tempting. Logan had never been good with authority, and from what Vizslaw described, the Republic sounded like bureaucracy wrapped in noble intentions, the kind of system Logan had learned to distrust through hard experience. But aligning with a faction in an unknown war could have consequences he couldn't predict. What's your angle? Logan asked bluntly. You don't strike me as the charitable type. Why help me? Vizslaw smiled coldly. Because a warrior with indestructible claws and regenerative healing could be a valuable ally. And because the Republic and their Jedi enforcers have grown too powerful. Variables like you, beings with abilities outside the Force, represent opportunities for those of us who refuse to kneel before Force users. There it was. Logan had been recruited, manipulated, and used enough times to recognize the pattern. Vizslaw wanted a weapon, someone to advance his political agenda. But Logan also recognized pragmatism. The Mandalorians had resources, information, and mobility. Used carefully, they could help him reunite the X-Men. I'll travel with you, Logan decided. But I don't fight your war. I help my people. We find the X-Men, figure out how we got here, and get home. After that, your politics aren't my problem. Acceptable. Vizslaw replaced his helmet. Prepare transport. We leave within the hour. As Mandalorians mobilized around him, Logan's enhanced hearing caught the distant hum of approaching engines, Republic ships, probably carrying Jedi investigators. He'd bought himself freedom of movement, but at what cost? In his experience, deals with warlords always came with hidden prices. His thoughts drifted to the others. Chuck and Jean were probably dealing with Jedi politics. Scott would be trying to establish order and command structure. Rogue would be terrified of accidentally absorbing someone in this alien environment. Hank would be fascinated by the technology. Aurora would be seeking to help anyone suffering. And Eric. Magneto in a galaxy built on metal technology and massive starships. That was a nightmare waiting to happen. The Mandalorian transport, an angular vessel bristling with weapons, powered up its engines. Logan climbed aboard, his claws retracting as he settled into an uncomfortable seat designed for armored warriors. Through the viewport, he watched Concordia's forests recede as they lifted toward space. Somewhere out there, the X-Men were scattered and vulnerable. Logan had survived worse, wars, experiments, betrayals spanning lifetimes. He'd find them. Reunite them. Get them home. But first, he needed to understand this galaxy. And the Mandalorians, for better or worse, were his ticket to that understanding. The stars of an alien galaxy stretched before him, infinite and cold. Logan had been lost before. He'd always found his way back. This time would be no different. It had to be. Metalorn's industrial landscape stretched beneath perpetually gray skies, the planet's natural atmosphere choked by centuries of manufacturing pollution. Massive droid foundries dominated the surface, their smokestacks belching toxic fumes while assembly lines produced B-1 battle droids, droidekas, and super battle droids for the Separatist war machine. The enslaved population, Mandalorian natives and prisoners from conquered systems, worked in brutal conditions, their lives measured in productivity quotas and expendability. Ororo Monroe had awakened in one of the factory districts, her white hair contrasting starkly against the industrial grime. Her weather-sensing abilities immediately registered the planet's ecological devastation, polluted air, acid rain threatening in the upper atmosphere, and a profound imbalance that made her soul ache. She had seen environmental destruction on Earth, fought to protect nature from exploitation. But this? This was systematic annihilation of a world's biosphere in service of war. The first overseer droid had spotted her within minutes, its mechanical voice demanding identification. When Ororo couldn't provide proper documentation, more droids converged. She'd tried diplomacy, tried to understand the situation peacefully. Then she'd seen the slaves, humanoid beings with exhausted eyes, bodies marked by malnutrition and abuse, some collapsed at their stations while droids administered electric shocks to force continued labor. Storm's eyes had turned pure white. The wind arrived first, a howling gale that tore through the factory district with surgical precision. It lifted droids off their feet and slammed them against walls, metal bodies sparking and shorting out. Thunder followed, rolling across the sky with primal fury. Lightning struck with pinpoint accuracy, frying droid circuits while leaving organic beings untouched. Rain came next, not the acid rain of Mandalorian's poison clouds, but clean water summoned from atmospheric. Moisture Ororo controlled absolutely. The slaves stared in awe and terror as this white-haired goddess wielded weather itself as a weapon. "I am Storm," Ororo declared, her voice amplified by wind, carrying across the factory complex. "And I will not stand by while sentient beings suffer under mechanical tyranny. You are free. Run, hide, resist, but you are free." The slaves didn't need further encouragement. Years of oppression shattered in an instant as they fled their stations, overwhelming the remaining droids through sheer numbers. Ororo guided them with wind currents, creating paths through the chaos, ensuring the elderly and injured received shelter from debris. But Mandalorian's Separatist command didn't tolerate rebellion. Within the hour, droid reinforcements arrived, thousands of B-1 battle droids marching in formation, their blasters raised. Droideka shields flickered to life as the mechanical spheres rolled into position. Overhead, vulture droids screamed through the atmosphere, their weapons locked on the factory district center, where Storm stood as a living hurricane, protecting refugees clustered behind her. "Surrender, Organic," the tactical droid commander broadcast. "You have disrupted factory production and incited slave revolt. Separatist Council authorization granted, lethal force approved." Ororo's response was lightning, 3 simultaneous strikes that disabled the command unit and 2 adjacent super battle droids. "I have faced gods and demons. I have commanded hurricanes and held back tsunamis. Your mechanical soldiers do not frighten me." The battle was breathtaking and brutal. Storm wove weather into a living shield, deflecting blaster bolts with focused wind currents while returning fire through lightning strikes. She called fog to blind targeting systems, then used localized tornadoes to scatter droid formations. Her powers, honed through decades of experience as an X-Man, adapted to this new battlefield with devastating efficiency. But even Storm had limits. The mutant X gene provided extraordinary abilities, but not unlimited endurance. Each lightning strike drained her energy. Each atmospheric manipulation required concentration and will. And the droids? The droids felt no fatigue, no fear, no mercy. They simply continued coming, wave after wave, their tactics adapting to her demonstrated capabilities. A vulture droid's missile struck nearby, the explosion throwing Ororo against a factory wall. Her uniform, designed for Earth's atmosphere, was already torn and scorched. Blood trickled from a cut above her eye. Behind her, the slaves huddled in a makeshift shelter formed from collapsed machinery and wind-sculpted debris. They looked at her with hope, with desperation, with the belief that this goddess from the sky would save them. Ororo pushed herself upright, summoning reserve she wasn't sure she possessed. She was an X-Man. She was a queen. She was Storm. And she would not let innocence die while breath remained in her body. The sky above Mandalorian darkened further as she drew upon every atmospheric system within range. This wasn't tactical anymore, this was raw power, primal fury channeled through a woman who had worshipped as a goddess in African tribes and fought alongside Earth's mightiest heroes. The winds howled with voices of ancient storms. Lightning danced across the clouds in patterns that spoke of nature's wrath. Then a new sound cut through the chaos, repulsor engines, military grade, approaching fast. 3 Republic gunships descended through the storm, their clone pilots navigating conditions that should have been impossible. The lead gunship's side door opened, revealing a young woman in Jedi robes, her blue lightsaber ignited and her orange skin marked with white facial tattoos. Beside her, a taller figure in dark robes radiated an intensity that even Storm's weather senses detected, powerful, focused, and dangerous. "Hold your fire," the young Jedi shouted over the wind. "We're here to help." Ororo's white eyes narrowed. More soldiers, more factions, more complications. But these newcomers were engaging the droids, their lightsabers deflecting blaster fire while clone troopers provided covering fire. And in the second gunship's cockpit, Ororo's enhanced vision caught 2 familiar figures, Professor Xavier and Jean Grey. Ororo, Xavier's telepathic voice cut through the storm with perfect clarity. We're friends. The Jedi are allies, at least for now. Stand down before you exhaust yourself beyond recovery, Professor, Ororo's mental voice carried relief and confusion. How did you? Explanations later. Right now, we need to evacuate these people and extract you before Separatist capital ships arrive. Jean says you have approximately 12 minutes before orbital bombardment begins. These facilities are too valuable to lose, and the Separatists will sacrifice everything on this planet to maintain production, The young Jedi, Ahsoka Tano, though Ororo didn't yet know her name, fought with impressive skill, her dual lightsabers weaving patterns that deflected blaster fire while she advanced on the droid positions. The older Jedi, Anakin Skywalker, fought with barely controlled aggression, his blue blade carving through super battle droids with fluid precision. Get the civilians to the gunships. Anakin ordered the clone troopers. Storm, or whatever your name is, we're on your side. Ororo let the storm recede gradually, carefully, maintaining enough atmospheric control to shield the evacuation but not so much that she'd collapse from exhaustion. The slaves moved quickly, decades of survival instinct driving them toward the Republic transports. Clone troopers established a perimeter, their training and coordination impressive even to someone who'd fought alongside the X-Men. Jean emerged from the second gunship, her telekinesis lifting debris to clear paths while her telepathy coordinated the evacuation with precision. Ororo. We need to go. Now. These people will be taken to Republic refugee centers, Xavier interjected, his hovering wheelchair moving down the gunship's ramp with repulsor-assisted technology he'd quickly adapted to. Not ideal, but better than Separatist slavery. We can't save everyone today, Ororo. But we can save these few hundred. That has to be enough. It went against every instinct Storm possessed. She'd seen the scope of suffering on this planet, millions enslaved, ecosystems destroyed, a civilization ground to dust beneath war's heel. But Xavier was right. She was exhausted, outnumbered, and in no position to liberate an entire planet. The last gunship lifted off as Separatist reinforcements arrived, AAT tanks, more droidekas, and the distinctive profiles of HMP droid gunships. Anakin's lightsaber deflected a final volley of blaster fire before he leaped aboard, the force enhancing his jump to impossible heights. Punch it, he shouted to the pilot. The gunships accelerated upward through Mandalorian's polluted atmosphere, pursued by droid fighters. In the passenger bay, Ororo sat beside Jean, her breathing labored, her body trembling from power expenditure. Xavier's telepathy provided soothing mental support, easing the strain on her consciousness. "Professor, where are we?" Aurora asked quietly. "Another universe," Xavier replied simply. "A galaxy at war, where power manifests through something called the Force rather than genetic mutation. We've been separated, Logan on a planet called Mandalore, others scattered across systems we're still identifying. The Jedi Council has agreed to help us locate everyone and potentially find a way home." Ahsoka sat across from them, her blue eyes curious and cautious. "Your powers aren't like the Force. Master Yoda said you're genetic anomalies from another dimension. That's kind of amazing. Also terrifying." "We get that reaction a lot," Jean said with a tired smile. Anakin moved through the gunship, his presence commanding even in the cramped space. He studied Aurora with an intensity that suggested both assessment and respect. "You held off a droid army to protect slaves. That takes power and principle. The Jedi Order could use more of both." "I'm not joining anyone's order," Aurora replied firmly. "I have my own team, my own mission. Once we're reunited, we go home." "If there is a way home," Xavier added quietly. The implications hung heavy in the air. Stranded in an alien galaxy during a massive interstellar war, the X-Men faced challenges unlike any they'd encountered. Their powers worked, but the context was entirely foreign. Their values of coexistence and peaceful resolution seemed almost quaint in a conflict involving planetary invasions and droid armies. The gunship shuddered as it broke through Mandalore's orbital defenses, Republic cruisers providing cover fire against pursuing Separatist vessels. Through the viewport, Aurora saw her first glimpse of true space warfare, massive ships exchanging turbolaser fire, starfighters dogfighting in three-dimensional combat, and the cold beauty of stars undimmed by atmospheric pollution. "Welcome to the Clone Wars," Anakin said, noting her expression. "Where every day brings new impossible situations and moral compromises. You'll fit right in." Storm met his eyes steadily. "I won't compromise my principles, Anakin Skywalker. Not for war, not for survival, not for anyone." Something flickered across the young Jedi's face, respect, perhaps, or recognition of something he'd lost himself. "Then you're stronger than most of us." The Republic cruiser's hangar bay opened before them, a sanctuary of metal and military order. As the gunship settled onto the deck, surrounded by clone troopers and military personnel, Aurora understood with perfect clarity. The X-Men had arrived in a galaxy where their greatest strength, their ability to inspire hope and change through example, would be tested against forces that measured success in conquered systems and destroyed enemies. She was Storm. She had commanded the weather since childhood, led the X-Men, ruled as a queen. But here, in this vast and violent galaxy, she was just another refugee trying to survive. For now, that would have to be enough. The Outer Rim's lawless territories offered refuge to those who lived beyond Republic law and Separatist control. Smugglers, bounty hunters, criminal syndicates, and exiled politicians carved out survival in the shadows between galactic powers. It was here, on a dusty trading outpost called Arshada, the smuggler's moon, that Eric Lencher discovered the truth about his new reality. Magneto had awakened in a scrapyard, surrounded by more metal than he'd encountered anywhere on Earth. Starship hulls, droid components, weapons, tools, infrastructure, this entire civilization built its foundation on metallic alloys. To a man who could manipulate magnetic fields with thought alone, it was like awakening in paradise. Or a weapons depot waiting for the right trigger. His first experiment confirmed his powers functioned, though with subtle differences. The galaxy's magnetic fields felt foreign, their polarity and intensity calibrated to different stellar conditions. But Eric adapted quickly. He'd spent decades mastering his abilities, learning to sense metal in all its forms. A few hours of careful testing revealed the new parameters, and within a day, Magneto wielded his powers with near-original precision. The scrapyard's owner, a Rodian named Tico, had been the first to witness Eric's abilities. The alien's compound eyes had widened in terror as hundreds of metal components lifted into the air, assembling into intricate patterns at Magneto's unspoken command. Tico had dropped to his knees, babbling in broken basic about Force users and Jedi. "I am no Jedi," Eric had replied coldly. "I am something far more dangerous, a man who sees potential where others see only scrap." Word spread quickly in Nar Shadda's underworld. A human who controlled metal without touching it, who moved starship hulls with gestures, who could disarm a dozen bounty hunters without raising his voice. The Hutt cartel sent representatives. Black Sun dispatched recruiters. Even the Pike Syndicate expressed interest in this mysterious newcomer who wielded power reminiscent of Force sensitivity but operating through entirely different principles. Eric met with them all in a cantina that reeked of alien alcohol and poorly concealed desperation. He sat at a corner table, a glass of something vaguely resembling wine before him, while faction representatives made their pitches. The Hutt cartel controls spice routes, slave markets, and entertainment enterprises across 6 sectors, the Twi'lek spokesman explained, his leku twitching nervously as metal utensils on nearby tables trembled in response to Eric's unconscious magnetic influence. "With your abilities, we could expand operations, eliminate competitors, and enslave more beings." Eric interrupted quietly. His memories of Nazi concentration camps never truly faded, they shaped everything he was, every decision he made. "I've seen slavery's face. I will not perpetuate it." The Twi'lek paled. "Perhaps we misunderstood your interests. The cartel offers other opportunities." "The cartel offers nothing I want." Eric's hand moved fractionally, and the Twi'lek's blaster tore itself from its holster, disassembled in midair, and clattered to the floor in component pieces. "Leave." The next representative, a Pike in distinctive armor, took a more direct approach. "The Pike Syndicate doesn't deal in slaves. We traffic in spice and technology. The Clone Wars create demand for weapons and supplies. Your abilities could revolutionize droid production, starship construction, weapon manufacturing. For war profiteering." Eric's expression hardened. "You've mistaken me for someone who lacks principles. I've fought wars. I've seen what manufactured conflict does to civilization. Whatever your Clone Wars represent, I won't fuel it for profit." But as Eric rejected offer after offer, he listened carefully to the information each faction revealed. This galaxy was engulfed in conflict between a republic seemingly democratic but reliant on slave soldiers called clones, and separatists who used droid armies to challenge centralized authority. The Jedi served as Republic generals, wielding the Force alongside political influence that made them both peacekeepers and warriors. And beneath it all, Eric sensed patterns that reminded him disturbingly of Earth's political machinations. Powers manipulating populations through fear and idealism. Wars that enriched the few while sacrificing the many. The familiar stench of corruption dressed in noble rhetoric. His thoughts were interrupted by a new arrival, a human woman in practical clothing, her dark hair streaked with gray, her eyes carrying the weight of someone who'd seen too much. She sat across from Eric without invitation, sliding a datapad across the table. "I'm Senator Mina Bonteri of Onderon," she said quietly. "I serve in the Separatist Parliament, though I suspect that affiliation will make you cautious. I'm not here to recruit you, Mr. Lencher. I'm here because I believe you might be the catalyst this galaxy needs." Eric raised an eyebrow. "You know my name. Nar Shadda has eyes and ears everywhere. A man who controls metal, who rejects slavery and war profiteering, who possesses power outside the Force's influence. That information reaches people who pay attention." Bonteri activated the datapad, showing images of factory worlds, clone facilities, and droid foundries. The Clone Wars aren't what they appear. Both sides are being manipulated. The Republic sacrifices its principles for military victory while the Separatists justify atrocities in the name of independence. Meanwhile, beings like us, those who see the corruption, are silenced or eliminated. Why tell me this? Eric asked, though the senator's words resonated with his own observations. Because you're an outsider. You owe allegiance to neither Republic nor Separatist. And because your abilities represent something unprecedented, power that exists beyond the Force, beyond the Jedi and Sith's control. Bonteri leaned forward. The Jedi claim to serve the Republic, but they've become generals in a war they don't understand. The Sith. She paused. There are rumors of Sith involvement, though no one can prove it. But someone is orchestrating this conflict, profiting from endless violence. Eric's magnetic senses detected surveillance devices throughout the cantina, dozens of listening posts, recording equipment, tracking technology. With a thought, he scrambled them all, creating a sphere of electromagnetic interference around their table. You're taking considerable risk speaking so openly, Senator. These are desperate times. I've watched my people suffer while politicians and Force users play cosmic chess with our lives. You asked why I'm telling you this? Because I believe you have the power to disrupt their game. To offer a third option beyond Republic submission or Separatist rebellion. And what would this third option look like? Bonteri's expression grew intense. A coalition of worlds that refuse both Republic and Separatist authority. Systems that choose independence not through droid armies but through mutual defense and economic cooperation. With someone like you, someone who could disable entire fleets without firing a shot, we could force negotiations that neither side could ignore. It was ambitious. Idealistic, perhaps dangerously so. But Eric had spent his life fighting for the oppressed, for those crushed beneath systems that viewed them as expendable. Mutants on Earth faced persecution from humans who feared their differences. Here, entire planetary populations suffered while galactic powers waged war over ideology and territory. I need to find my companions first, Eric said finally. I wasn't alone when I arrived. My team is scattered across this galaxy, probably confused and vulnerable. Once we're reunited, then I'll consider larger implications. The XMen, Bonteri supplied. Yes, intelligence reports suggest multiple anomalous arrivals across various systems. The Jedi have encountered at least 2 already, Xavier and Jean Grey on Coruscant, and a woman who controls weather on Mandalorian. Republic military is conducting searches for others. Eric's jaw tightened. Charles was with the Jedi. That complicated matters. Xavier would likely find common ground with Force users who preached peace and diplomacy. But Eric knew better, institutions that claimed moral authority while waging war were the most dangerous of all. The Jedi might wear the mantle of peacekeepers, but they commanded armies and made strategic decisions that killed millions. How do I contact the others without alerting Republic authorities? Eric asked. Bonteri smiled grimly. The same way dissidents, smugglers, and rebels communicate, through channels the Republic doesn't control. I can provide access to the Shadow Network, a communication system used by parties who value privacy. It won't be secure forever, but it should give you time to coordinate with your companions. She stood, leaving the datapad on the table. The galaxy is changing, Mr. Lencher. Powers like yours, abilities that exist beyond the Force's paradigm, represent evolution. The question is whether that evolution serves the people or becomes another tool for those in power. Choose wisely. After the senator departed, Eric sat in contemplative silence. The cantina's metal fixtures hummed with latent magnetic potential, responsive to his slightest thought. Starships in the moon's orbital traffic passed overhead, their hulls containing enough metal to be crushed like tin cans if he chose. This galaxy's dependence on technology made it uniquely vulnerable to someone with his abilities. But power without purpose was tyranny. Eric had learned that lesson through hard experience. He'd founded the Brotherhood of Mutants to protect his kind, sometimes through methods Charles deemed too extreme. Here, in this alien galaxy, would he repeat old patterns? Or could he forge something new? His magnetic senses detected someone approaching, a presence that moved with lethal grace, carrying weapons and ill intent. Eric didn't move, simply raising one hand. The would-be assassin's blaster and vibroblade tore from their sheaths, hanging in the air between them. The assassin, a Zabrak covered in ritual tattoos, froze. "Who sent you?" Eric asked calmly. "The Hutt cartel doesn't accept rejection," the Zabrak hissed. "You embarrassed their representative. They wanted to make an example." Eric closed his fist. The weapons crumpled into compact spheres of useless metal and clattered to the floor. "Tell your employers that I am not their enemy unless they make me so. But if they persist, I will demonstrate exactly how vulnerable their operations are to someone who controls metal. Every ship, every weapon, every security system, all mine to command. Am I clear?" The assassin fled. Eric collected Bonteri's datapad and left the cantina, his mind already working through logistics. Charles would advocate for cooperation with established powers, for working within systems to create change. But Eric had never trusted systems, they were designed by the powerful to maintain power. This republic, these Jedi, the Separatists, they were all symptoms of the same disease, centralized authority deciding the fates of billions without accountability. The Shadow Network's access codes opened new possibilities. Eric drafted a message, encoding it carefully, *Charles, if you receive this, know that I'm safe and searching for the others. Be cautious with the Jedi. Institutions that claim moral authority while waging war are dangerous regardless of their noble intentions. We need to reunite and decide our path independently. Trust no one. Completely. Eric *. He transmitted the message through the Shadow Network's encrypted channels, knowing it might never reach Xavier or could be intercepted by any number of intelligence agencies. But it was a start. Nar Shadda's neon lights reflected off Magneto's helmet as he walked through streets filled with aliens, criminals, and refugees from a dozen wars. This galaxy didn't know it yet, but mutation had arrived. And mutation always changed the game. The question was whether that change would be evolution or revolution. Eric suspected it would be both. The Republic military outpost on XMenVsSith was a forward operating base carved into the planet's distinctive crystal formations. Here, Clone Commander Cody coordinated defensive operations while Republic forces held the line against Separatist incursions. When 3 unknown individuals materialized in the middle of a supply depot, their arrival accompanied by an energy signature that scrambled every sensor within 100 meters, the clone troopers responded with professional efficiency. Within minutes, Scott Summers, Rogue, and Hank McCoy found themselves surrounded by white-armored soldiers pointing blaster rifles at their heads. "Hands where we can see them," Commander Cody ordered, his helmet's vocoder adding mechanical authority to his voice. "Identify yourselves and explain how you bypassed our perimeter defenses." Scott raised his hands slowly, his ruby quartz visor reflecting the crystal formations around them. "We're not hostile. My name is Scott Summers, codename Cyclops. These are my teammates Rogue and Beast. We don't know how we got here, there was an incident, a dimensional rift, and we were pulled through. We're trying to find the rest of our team." Cody's helmet tilted slightly, processing the information. Dimensional rift. That's a new one. And those, enhancements? He gestured toward Hank's blue-furred, distinctly non-human appearance and the strange visor covering Scott's eyes. "Genetic mutations," Hank explained, his cultured voice at odds with his bestial appearance. The clone trooper's weapons tracked him as he spread his large hands in a placating gesture. "We're what our world calls mutants, humans born with extraordinary abilities. I possess enhanced strength, agility, and intelligence, among other adaptations. My colleague Scott generates powerful energy beams from his eyes, controlled only by his specialized visor. And Rogue." "Don't touch me," Rogue interrupted sharply, her southern accent thick with stress. She kept her gloved hands raised, her entire body language screaming caution. "Ah can absorb people's life force, memories, and abilities through skin contact. It's not something Ah can control, and it could kill y'all if you're not careful." The clone troopers exchanged glances. Cody lowered his weapon fractionally. "You're telling me you're Force-sensitive?" "We don't know what that means," Scott replied. "Where we come from, abilities like ours are genetic, not whatever Force-sensitive implies. Look, we understand this looks suspicious, but we're not your enemies. We're lost, separated from our team leader and friends, and trying to understand what happened to us." Cody activated his comm. "General Kenobi, we have a situation at the supply depot. 3 beings claiming dimensional displacement with apparent biological enhancements. Requesting your presence." The response was immediate. "On my way, Commander. Keep them contained but treat them as potential allies until we have more information." While they waited, Hank's analytical mind worked to process their surroundings. The crystal formations suggested they were on a planet rich in unusual geological structures. The soldiers' armor was advanced but not impossibly so, perhaps equivalent to late 21st century Earth military technology with some exotic enhancements. The weapons appeared to be directed energy devices, likely plasma-based given the visible bolt characteristics. "Fascinating," Hank murmured. "The technological development here suggests a civilization with faster-than-light travel, energy weapons, and sophisticated communications. Yet the soldiers display organic cognitive patterns, they're not robots, despite the uniform appearance." "We're clone troopers," one of the soldiers offered, apparently deciding conversation was less threatening than silence. "Bred on Kamino, trained from birth to serve the Republic. Best soldiers in the galaxy." Rogue's eyes widened. "Bred? Y'all mean cloned? From who?" "Jango Fett, the best bounty hunter alive before his death. We're all him, more or less. Same genetics, different experiences." Scott's tactical mind immediately recognized the implications. An army of identical soldiers, bred for obedience, trained from childhood for war. It was efficient, certainly, but the ethical implications made his skin crawl. These men weren't volunteers, they were manufactured for a purpose, their entire existence defined by a conflict they hadn't chosen. "That's troubling," Scott said carefully. Before the conversation could continue, a new figure approached, a man in brown robes with a neatly trimmed beard and calm, penetrating blue eyes. He moved with fluid grace, one hand resting on a cylindrical weapon at his belt. The clone troopers immediately straightened to attention. "At ease, men," Obi-Wan Kenobi said, his cultured accent carrying natural authority. His gaze swept across the 3 X-Men, lingering on Hank's unusual appearance and Scott's visor. "I am Jedi Master Obi-Wan Kenobi. Commander Cody tells me you've arrived under extraordinary circumstances." "That's an understatement," Scott replied. "We're from Earth, another universe entirely, as far as we can tell. Something pulled us here, scattered our team across multiple locations. We need to find them and figure out how to get home." Obi-Wan stroked his beard thoughtfully. "Earth. Not a planet in Republic records. And your abilities," Commander Cody mentioned mutations. Hank stepped forward, his bestial appearance drawing wary looks from the clone troopers. "Indeed. We represent a subspecies of humanity known as Homo superior, mutants whose X gene activates during puberty, granting extraordinary abilities. My own mutations include enhanced physical capabilities, prehensile feet, and significantly elevated intelligence. My colleague Scott possesses optic force beams, while Rogue absorbs the life essence and abilities of those she touches. Yet I sense no connection to the Force in any of you," Obi-Wan observed. "Your powers stem from biology rather than midichlorian symbiosis. Remarkable. And unprecedented in my experience." Scott's strategic training kicked in. This Jedi seemed reasonable, measured, a potential ally if handled correctly. "Master Kenobi, we don't want to interfere with your operations or conflicts. But we need help locating our team. Do you have detection capabilities that could identify unusual energy signatures across multiple planets?" "The Republic has extensive sensor networks," Obi-Wan confirmed. And as it happens, we've already detected several anomalies. 2 individuals arrived on Coruscant and are currently at the Jedi Temple, Xavier and Jean Grey, according to their own testimony. A woman controlling weather was extracted from Mandalorian. And there are reports of a warrior with retractable metal claws on Mandalore. Relief flooded Scott's features. Professor Xavier and Jean are alive. Thank God. What about the others? Still being investigated. The galaxy is vast, Mr. Summers, and locating individuals without specific coordinates is challenging even with our resources. Obi-Wan's expression grew serious. However, I must be frank with you. The Republic is engaged in a galactic civil war against the Separatist alliance. Resources are stretched thin, and while I personally sympathize with your situation, convincing the Senate and military command to prioritize dimensional refugees over strategic objectives will be difficult. We can earn our keep, Scott said immediately. We're trained combatants with years of experience fighting threats on Earth. If you need tactical support, security operations, rescue missions, we can contribute in exchange for assistance finding our team. Rogue shot Scott a sharp look. Scott, are we really signing up for somebody else's war? We don't know anything about these factions, who's right, who's wrong. We know we need allies, Scott countered. And right now, the Republic is offering help. We don't have to fight their war, but we can provide services that demonstrate good faith. Obi-Wan raised a hand. Let's not make hasty commitments. Why don't you accompany me to the command center? We can coordinate with the Jedi Temple on Coruscant, establish communication with your teammates, and assess the situation more thoroughly. The Republic doesn't conscript unwilling participants, despite what some might claim about our clone army. The subtle criticism in Obi-Wan's tone suggested the Jedi had his own complicated feelings about the clones. Scott filed that away. Internal tensions and ethical conflicts could be valuable information. The command center was a marvel of military efficiency. Holographic displays showed troop positions, supply lines, and enemy movements across multiple star systems. Clone officers coordinated operations with precision that would make any Earth military jealous. And at the center of it all, a holographic conference with the Jedi Temple on Coruscant was already in progress. Professor Xavier's familiar face appeared in the hologram, his expression relieved when he saw Scott, Rogue, and Hank. Thank goodness you're safe. Jean and I have been coordinating with the Jedi Council to locate everyone. Logan is on Mandalore with a faction called Death Watch, not ideal, but he's unharmed. Ororo was extracted from Mandalore and is currently aboard a Republic cruiser. That leaves Eric unaccounted for. Magneto, Scott said grimly. If he's loose in a galaxy built on metal technology, that's a crisis waiting to happen. Indeed, Xavier agreed. We've intercepted encrypted communications suggesting someone matching Eric's description is on NR Shada, though he's using the Shadow Network, criminal communication channels outside Republic monitoring. He sent a message warning me about trusting the Jedi too completely. Obi-Wan's expression remained neutral, but Scott sensed the Jedi took no offense. Your companion sounds like a cautious individual. Probably wise, given the circumstances. The Shadow Network is monitored by Republic intelligence, though with limited success. If he's there, we can dispatch operatives. No, Xavier interrupted firmly. Eric has a complicated history with authority figures. Sending armed operatives will provoke confrontation. Allow me to contact him directly. He'll respond to me, if anyone. The holographic conference continued, logistics and strategies being debated by Jedi Masters and X-Men leaders. Scott watched it all with growing unease. They were being drawn into this galaxy's conflicts despite their intentions to remain neutral. The Republic offered resources, but acceptance came with expectations. And somewhere out there, Magneto operated independently, likely with his own agenda. Rogue leaned close to Scott, whispering, "This feels like when we first joined the X-Men. Everything moving too fast, decisions being made without all the information. Don't like it." Neither do I, Scott admitted quietly. But we're in no position to demand better terms. We're refugees, Rogue. Lost in a galaxy we don't understand, surrounded by factions fighting a war we know nothing about. The professor's making the best choices he can with limited options. Hank, monitoring the holographic displays with his enhanced intellect, interjected, the strategic situation is more complex than a simple Republic versus Separatist narrative. I'm detecting patterns suggesting third-party manipulation, supply chains that benefit both sides, weapons manufacturers with Republic and Separatist contracts, financial flows that don't align with stated political objectives. Someone is profiting enormously from this conflict's continuation. Obi-Wan had been listening. Your beast is observant. The Jedi Council has similar concerns, though we lack concrete evidence. This war escalated rapidly, driven by forces we don't fully understand. If your analytical capabilities could help uncover those patterns. In exchange for resources to locate our remaining teammate and research dimensional travel, Hank finished. A fair trade, Master Kenobi. I would be honored to assist. Scott made the decision. We'll work with the Republic on a provisional basis. Provide tactical support, analytical assistance, whatever you need that doesn't violate our principles. In return, you help us reunite our team and research a way home. But we're not soldiers in your army, and we reserve the right to withdraw if we determine the Republic's actions conflict with our values. Acceptable, Obi-Wan agreed. Welcome to the Clone Wars, X-Men. I suspect your presence will change the equation in ways neither side anticipates. As the conference concluded and clone troopers prepared quarters for the new arrivals, Scott stared out at Christophsis's crystal landscape. They'd fought for mutant rights, battled sentinels and hostile governments, faced cosmic threats and personal demons. But this? This was survival in the purest sense, strangers in an alien galaxy, making alliances of necessity while searching for a way home. The X-Men had faced impossible odds before. They'd survived through teamwork, principle, and determination. This time would be no different. It had to be. Count Dooku stood on the bridge of his Providence-class dreadnought, the invisible hand, watching holographic reports of the latest Republic movements with aristocratic disdain. The Separatist leader, once a Jedi Master himself, had orchestrated this war with meticulous precision, each battle a calculated move in a grander strategy only he and his Sith Master truly understood. But recent developments troubled even his considerable composure. Dimensional anomalies, he murmured, reading the intelligence reports compiled by his tactical droids. Beings with abilities outside the Force's paradigm. How unexpected. General Grievous, the cyborg commander whose mere presence inspired terror across Republic space, approached with his characteristic predatory gait. His mechanical body, mostly droid with only vestigial organic components, clicked and whirred with each movement. These mutants could be valuable assets, Count. Their powers would enhance our military capabilities significantly. Or destabilize everything, Dooku countered. Powers that exist independently of the Force challenge the natural order. The Jedi don't understand what they're dealing with, and neither do we. Yet. But as Dooku reviewed the specific reports, telepaths who could read minds without Force connection, a man who controlled metal through electromagnetic manipulation, a woman who wielded weather itself, he recognized opportunity. The Jedi Council would attempt to study these newcomers, perhaps recruit them. The Republic would see them as resources. But Dooku understood something more fundamental: beings this powerful, this displaced, would be searching for purpose and direction. And beings searching could be guided. Transmit a communication, Dooku ordered. Encrypted, using channels that Republic intelligence won't immediately detect. Target the individuals separately, divide them before the Jedi can fully integrate them into Republic operations. Professor Xavier received the first message while meditating in his temporary quarters at the Jedi Temple. The communication bypassed standard protocols, appearing directly on his personal datapad with an encryption sophistication that impressed even his considerable intellect. Professor Xavier, **. I am Count Dooku, formerly of the Jedi Order, now serving as head of state for the Confederacy of Independent Systems. I understand you and your companions have been drawn into a conflict you did not choose and do not fully comprehend. The Republic portrays our separatist movement as rebellion and terrorism. I offer you an alternative perspective, *. The Galactic Republic is a corrupt, bureaucratic monstrosity that has failed trillions of beings across thousands of systems. Core worlds prosper while outer rim populations suffer under taxation without representation, exploitation without protection. When peaceful reform proved impossible, we chose independence, not rebellion, but liberation, *. The Jedi, once peacekeepers, have become generals in a war they don't understand, serving politicians who manipulate them. You claim to advocate for coexistence and peaceful resolution. Yet you stand alongside an institution that manufactures slave soldiers, your clone troopers, bred for obedience and disposability, *. I do not ask for your immediate allegiance. I ask only that you consider both sides before committing to a cause that may betray the principles you claim to uphold. The Separatist Council welcomes dialogue with beings of conscience and capability, *. Should you wish to discuss these matters further, I am available through secure channels, *. Respectfully, *. Count Dooku *. Xavier read the message twice, his telepathy analyzing every nuance. The arguments were sophisticated, appealing to his philosophical foundations while highlighting genuine moral inconsistencies in the Republic's conduct. The clone army did trouble him, sentient beings bred for war, their choices made before birth, their lives valued only for their utility. It was uncomfortably close to the slavery Eric had experienced in Nazi camps, the systematic dehumanization both men had spent their lives fighting against. But Xavier had also sensed something during his interactions with the Jedi, genuine compassion, sincere belief in their peacekeeping mission, and profound discomfort with the war they'd been forced into. Master Yoda's wisdom was authentic, Obi-Wan's integrity undeniable. These were not monsters, they were imperfect beings trying to navigate impossible circumstances. Still, Dooku's message planted seeds of doubt that Xavier couldn't entirely dismiss. Storm received her message aboard the Republic cruiser as she recovered from her exhaustion. The communication arrived through encrypted channels, delivered by a courier droid that somehow bypassed ship security. Aurora Monroe, *. Your actions on Mandalorian demonstrated extraordinary courage and principle. You risked your life to protect enslaved beings from their mechanical oppressors. This is the essence of what our Confederacy fights for, liberation from systems that treat sentient beings as resources rather than individuals deserving dignity and freedom, *. The Republic will tell you the Separatist Alliance uses droid armies for conquest. The truth is more nuanced. We fight against a government that maintains power through clone slave soldiers while claiming moral superiority. We advocate for systems' rights to self-governance, free from core world exploitation, *. Your weather manipulation abilities could end suffering on drought-stricken worlds, restore ecosystems damaged by Republic industrial exploitation, and provide defensive capabilities without requiring sentient beings to die in combat, *. I do not ask you to fight our battles. I ask you to consider which side truly aligns with the principles that drove you to protect Mandalorian's enslaved population. When you're ready to discuss creating real change in this galaxy, contact me. Count Dooku. Storm read the message while staring out at the stars through the cruiser's viewport. She'd seen the slaves on Mandalorian, felt their suffering, witnessed systematic cruelty on a scale that made her soul ache. And Dooku was correct, the Republic did use clone soldiers, beings created specifically for war. How was that different from the droid armies the Separatists employed, except that clones could feel pain and fear? Yet Anakin and Ahsoka had risked their lives to help her evacuate those refugees. The clone troopers had fought to protect innocents, not exploit them. The Republic, for all its flaws, seemed to operate from a foundation of attempting to do good, even when failing. Dooku's message was seductive precisely because it contained truth. Storm had always fought for the oppressed, challenged systems that perpetuated injustice. But was the Separatist cause genuinely liberating, or simply another faction seeking power while cloaking itself in revolutionary rhetoric? Magneto's message arrived on Nar through the Shadow Network, delivered with perfect timing as Eric contemplated Senator Bonteri's proposition. Eric Lencher, **. I am Count Dooku. Like you, I have witnessed the corruption of institutions claiming moral authority. Like you, I have chosen to stand against systems that perpetuate injustice while declaring themselves righteous. Like you, I understand that true change requires strength, the will to act when others merely philosophize, **. Your magnetic abilities represent power unprecedented in this galaxy. You could reshape civilizations, topple governments, liberate populations. The Republic and Jedi will fear you precisely because you cannot be controlled through their established paradigms of force manipulation and political pressure, **. The Separatist alliance is not perfect, no movement is. But we fight for the principle that beings should govern themselves rather than submit to distant bureaucracies that exploit their resources while providing nothing in return. Your experience with oppression, your understanding of what it means to be persecuted for innate differences, aligns more closely with our cause than with Republic orthodoxy. I offer you resources, intelligence, and alliance with beings who share your contempt for corrupt authority. In exchange, I ask only that you consider the Separatist perspective before allowing the Jedi to define your understanding of this conflict. We could accomplish extraordinary things together, Eric. Or you could remain neutral while the galaxy burns around you. The choice is yours, **. Count Dooku. Eric read the message with cold analytical focus. Dooku was skilled. The communication appealed to Eric's revolutionary philosophy while subtly manipulating his distrust of authority. The Sith, for Eric's intelligence gathering had already identified Dooku's true allegiance, understood exactly which psychological buttons to press. But Eric had been manipulated before by beings who claimed to share his vision while pursuing their own agendas. Apocalypse, Mr. Sinister, even well-meaning allies who saw Magneto as a weapon to be aimed rather than a man with genuine beliefs. He would not make that mistake again. Still, Dooku's message confirmed Eric's suspicions. This war was manufactured, its leaders more interested in power than principle. Both Republic and Separatist used rhetoric to justify actions that served their interests rather than populations they claimed to protect. The XMen convened through encrypted holographic conference, Xavier and Jean on Coruscant, Storm on the Republic cruiser, Scott, Rogue, and Hank on XMenVsSith, Wolverine transmitting from a Mandalorian ship, and Magneto connecting through the Shadow Network from Nar. It was the first time they'd all communicated since their dimensional displacement, and the relief was palpable. "It's good to see you all alive," Xavier said, his telepathy unable to fully bridge the vast distances but his voice carrying genuine warmth. "We need to discuss our situation and make decisions about our path forward." "Dooku contacted me," Storm said immediately. "Tried to recruit me to the Separatist cause with appeals to liberation and justice." "Me too," Eric confirmed. "Sophisticated manipulation, but manipulation nonetheless." "And me," Xavier admitted. "Which suggests a coordinated effort to divide us before we can establish unified position. The Separatist leadership recognizes our potential value and seeks to prevent Republic alliance." Logan growled through the connection. "These Mandalorians respect strength, nothing else. They're not Republic, not Separatist, just warriors trying to preserve their culture. But they've got their own civil war brewing, between traditionalists and pacifists. Everywhere we turn, there's conflict. That's the nature of this galaxy," Hank interjected. "My analysis suggests this Clone Wars conflict exhibits characteristics of manufactured warfare, economic patterns that benefit arms dealers serving both sides, political maneuvering that escalates rather than resolves tensions, and information asymmetries that prevent populations from recognizing manipulation. Someone is orchestrating this conflict for purposes beyond stated political objectives. The Jedi suspect similar patterns," Scott added. "But they're caught in the war's momentum, unable to step back without abandoning their responsibilities to the Republic. We're outsiders, we could potentially investigate without factional loyalty compromising our objectivity. Or we could focus on getting home, Rogue said sharply. Didn't sign up to fix somebody else's galaxy. We find a way back to Earth, back to our own problems. Assuming that's possible, Jean countered gently. We don't know what brought us here or whether return is even feasible. If we're stuck in this galaxy, we need to establish position and purpose beyond simple survival. Xavier felt the familiar tension rising, the ideological divide that had always existed between his vision and Eric's, between those who believed in working within systems and those who advocated revolution. I propose we maintain provisional neutrality. Accept Republic assistance in reuniting physically. We need to be together, not scattered across star systems. But we don't commit to either faction's military operations. Instead, we investigate the underlying causes of this conflict and determine whether XMen intervention could genuinely create positive change. Charles, the Republic uses slave soldiers, Eric said coldly. How is that different from the systems of oppression we've fought our entire lives? It's not, Xavier admitted. And we should challenge that. But the Separatists use droid armies produced by enslaved organic workers on factory worlds like Mandalorian. Neither side is morally pristine. We need more information before making judgments. I agree with the professor, Scott said. Gather intelligence, reunite the team, assess the situation thoroughly. Then decide our course of action from position of knowledge rather than incomplete information. The Mandalorians could provide neutral ground, Logan suggested. They've got resources, they're not part of either faction, and they respect warriors who prove themselves. We could establish base of operations in their territory while investigating. Storm nodded. That appeals to me more than remaining aboard Republic military vessels or accepting Separatist hospitality. Independence until we understand what we're dealing with. The discussion continued, strategies debated and concerns raised. But beneath it all, Xavier sensed the deeper truth. The X-Men were being drawn into this galaxy's conflicts despite their intentions. Their powers made them valuable, their principles made them targets for recruitment, and their displacement made them vulnerable to manipulation from all sides. Count Dooku watched the encrypted intercepted portions of the X-Men's conference with satisfaction. They were divided, uncertain, exactly where he needed them. Let them establish neutral position, investigate the war's origins. When they discovered the truth, that Darth Sidious orchestrated both Republic and Separatist actions, they would be forced to choose sides. And beings with their power, once properly motivated, could tip the balance in ways even the Sith couldn't fully predict. That represented both opportunity and danger. But then, the Sith had always thrived on danger. The question was whether these mutants would prove useful tools or threats that needed elimination. Time would tell. And in a galaxy at war, time was measured in battles won and casualties inflicted. The game continued, pieces moving across the board, and the X-Men had just become players whether they realized it or not. The neutral space station known as the Wheel orbited in the intersection between Republic and Separatist territories, a lawless haven where diplomats, smugglers, spies, and mercenaries conducted business beyond governmental oversight. It was here, after days of careful negotiation and travel, that the X-Men finally reunited in person. Professor Xavier's wheelchair hummed quietly as he entered the private docking bay, Jean Grey at his side. Storm descended from a civilian transport, her white hair pristine despite the journey. Scott, Rogue, and Hank arrived aboard a Republic shuttle that immediately departed to avoid drawing attention. Wolverine emerged from a Mandalorian vessel, pre-Vizslos warriors flanking him briefly before returning to their ship. And finally, Magneto materialized from the station's depths, having arrived through channels even he didn't fully explain. For a moment, they simply looked at each other, teammates, friends, ideological rivals reunited in the most impossible of circumstances. Then Storm moved first, embracing Jean with fierce relief. Rogue hugged Professor Xavier, careful to keep her gloved hands from touching skin. Hank and Scott clasped forearms in mutual respect. Even Logan managed a gruff nod to everyone, his usual grumpiness unable to fully conceal his relief at seeing familiar faces. Magneto stood apart, his relationship with the team always complicated. But Xavier extended his hand, and after a moment's hesitation, Eric clasped it. "We survived," Xavier said simply. "Against considerable odds, we're all here." "Survival isn't victory, Charles," Eric replied. "We're stranded in an alien galaxy during a massive war, courted by factions who see us as weapons rather than beings. We need more than survival, we need strategy." "Then let's strategize," Scott said, gesturing toward the private conference room they'd rented. "No interruptions, no surveillance we can't control, and time to actually talk through our situation." The conference room was sparse but functional, a circular table, holographic display capabilities, and security systems that Hank immediately began analyzing and improving. Once satisfied they had privacy, the X-Men settled into their seats with the ease of a team that had faced countless crises together. Xavier initiated. "Let's establish facts. We're in a galaxy far from Earth, displaced by forces we don't understand and cannot currently replicate. Our powers function, though some of us experienced initial adjustment periods. The dominant civilizations here rely on something called the Force, a mystical energy field connected to midichlorians that grants abilities superficially similar to some mutant powers but operating through completely different mechanisms. This galaxy is embroiled in the Clone Wars," Scott continued, his tactical mind organizing information efficiently. "The Galactic Republic, a democratic federation of thousands of star systems, is fighting the Confederacy of Independent Systems, or Separatists, who claim the Republic is corrupt and unresponsive to Outer Rim needs. The Jedi Order serves as peacekeepers and generals for the Republic, while the Separatist leadership includes a former Jedi named Count Dooku. Both sides have contacted us separately," Storm added. "The Republic offers resources and assistance in exchange for cooperation. The Separatists appeal to our principles, highlighting Republic moral failures like the clone army, sentient beings bred specifically for war." Hank activated the holographic display, showing data he'd compiled. "My analysis reveals disturbing patterns. This conflict exhibits characteristics of orchestrated warfare. Both sides receive weapons and technology from overlapping corporate sources. Banking clans profit from loans to Republic and Separatist governments simultaneously. Strategic decisions on both sides seem designed to prolong conflict rather than achieve decisive victory. Someone is manipulating this war for purposes beyond stated political objectives. The Jedi suspect Sith involvement," Jean said. Master Yoda mentioned it cautiously. Apparently the Sith were ancient enemies of the Jedi who were thought extinct. But he believes they've returned and may be orchestrating events from the shadows. Sith, Jedi, Republic, Separatists, they're all part of the same corrupt system, Eric stated flatly. Power structures fighting over control while populations suffer. We've seen it on Earth countless times. The specifics change, but the fundamental dynamic remains, elites manipulating masses for their own benefit. That's cynical even for you, Eric, Xavier challenged. I've met the Jedi. They're genuinely committed to peace and justice, even if their methods are sometimes flawed. Reducing them to corrupt elites ignores their complexity. They command a slave army, Charles. Eric's voice rose, magnetic fields around the room fluctuating subtly with his emotion. These clone troopers are sentient beings bred for obedience, their autonomy stolen before birth. How is that different from the camps where I was imprisoned? Where beings were reduced to numbers, valued only for utility. The room fell silent. Xavier's telepathy sensed the pain beneath Eric's anger. Memories of Nazi atrocities that defined his worldview, shaped his revolutionary philosophy. You're right, Xavier admitted quietly. The clone army is morally indefensible. But that doesn't make the Separatists righteous. Dooku uses droid armies manufactured by enslaved populations. Both sides commit atrocities. Which is why we shouldn't ally with either, Logan growled. We stay independent. Focus on getting home. Let this galaxy sort out its own problems. Can we get home? Rogue asked, her southern accent thick with uncertainty. Does anyone actually know how we got here or whether return is possible? Hank adjusted his glasses, a nervous gesture. I've been analyzing the energy signatures from our arrival, comparing them to this galaxy's technological and physical parameters. The dimensional breach that brought us here required enormous energy, likely generated by Cerebro's amplification of Professor Xavier's telepathy combined with whatever interdimensional threat we were facing. Replicating those conditions intentionally would require resources and understanding we currently lack. So we might be stuck here permanently, Storm said, not quite a question. Unknown, Hank admitted. There are theoretical possibilities. This galaxy has hyperspace technology that involves dimensional manipulation. If we could understand the principles and access sufficient power sources, perhaps. But it could take months, years, or prove entirely impossible. Scott leaned forward, his tactical mind working through scenarios. Then we need a long-term plan. Assume we're here for the foreseeable future. What do we do? Where do we stand? We create a third option, Eric said immediately. Neither Republic nor Separatist. We establish our own faction, systems that refuse both corrupt governments. Use our abilities to defend populations who choose independence, building coalition of worlds that operate outside this manufactured conflict. That's declaring war on both sides simultaneously, Scott objected. We're 7 people, Eric, no matter how powerful. We can't fight galactic governments. We don't fight them, we demonstrate their irrelevance. I can disable entire fleets without firing a shot. Storm can defend planets from invasion through weather control. Charles can coordinate populations through telepathy. We offer protection neither government can match, making their military forces obsolete. That's revolution, Xavier said wearily. Eric. We've had this argument for decades. Using power to impose our vision, even with good intentions, leads to tyranny. We become what we claim to fight against. No, Charles, we become what's necessary. This galaxy doesn't need more politicians making promises they won't keep. It needs beings willing to act, to protect the vulnerable from predators in government uniforms. The ideological divide that had always existed between Xavier and Magneto threatened to fracture the team at the moment they most needed unity. But before the argument could escalate further, Jean intervened. Stop, she said firmly, her telekinesis lifting several objects around the room, a gentle demonstration of power that commanded attention without threatening. We're not deciding the fate of this galaxy today. We're deciding our immediate path forward. Eric, your vision requires resources, intelligence, and support we don't currently have. Professor, your hope that we can work within existing systems assumes those systems are reformable, which evidence suggests they may not be. So let's find middle ground. Agreed, Storm said. I propose we establish base of operations in neutral territory, Mandalorian space, perhaps, since Logan has connection there. We gather intelligence about this war's true nature, investigate who's really orchestrating events. If we discover the conflict is genuinely manufactured, we expose it. If we find one side is legitimately defensive, we assist them. But we make decisions based on evidence, not ideology. And we look for a way home, Rogue added. Whatever else we do, finned in, a way back to Earth should be priority. This isn't our galaxy, these aren't our problems. Hank nodded. I'll need access to advanced physics laboratories and hyperspace technology specifications. The Jedi have some of the galaxy's most sophisticated research facilities. Perhaps if I explain my objective is dimensional travel rather than weapons development, they'd grant access. The Mandalorians have their own technology, Logan said. Different from Republic or Separatist. Might be useful to compare approaches. And Vizsla owes me, I helped them with situation I won't detail, but they're open to providing support. Scott synthesized the discussion. So our plan is, establish neutral base in Mandalorian space, accept limited support from Republic sources for Hank's research, gather intelligence on the war's origins, and maintain independence from both factions while we search for a way home. Does anyone object? Magneto's jaw tightened, clearly unsatisfied with such a cautious approach. But even he recognized the team needed time and information before making larger strategic decisions. Acceptable as temporary measure. But Charles, when we inevitably discover that both governments are irredeemably corrupt, don't expect me to continue restraining my response. And when we discover the situation is more complex than simple corruption, Xavier countered, don't expect me to support revolutionary violence as the solution. The tension between them remained, but it was familiar tension, the philosophical divide that defined their relationship for decades. The rest of the team had learned to navigate between Xavier's idealism and Magneto's revolutionary pragmatism, extracting wisdom from both while following neither completely. As the meeting concluded and the X-Men began coordinating logistics, transport, supplies, communication protocols, Jean privately contacted Xavier through telepathy. "Professor, I sense something else. Something we haven't discussed openly. This force they talk about, I feel it. Not like our telepathy or telekinesis, but similar. Like there's an ocean of power surrounding everything, and I'm standing at its shore. What if coming here changed us somehow? What if we're not just mutants in a force-dominated galaxy, but something in between?" Xavier's mental response carried concern. "I felt it too, Jean. The force seems to resonate with our abilities in ways I don't fully understand. We'll need to be cautious. The Jedi and Sith have millennia of knowledge about this power. We're infants by comparison, stumbling in darkness that could swallow us, asterisk. Or illuminate us, asterisk, Jean suggested. Asterisk, maybe that's why we're here. Not accident, but purpose. What if mutation and the Force were always meant to meet? A dangerous thought, my dear. Purpose implies destiny, and destiny removes choice. We are what we choose to be, not what circumstance dictates." But even as Xavier projected confidence, doubt gnawed at him. The Force felt ancient, vast, and somehow aware, as if it had intentions of its own. And beings with intentions rarely appreciated variables they couldn't control. The X-Men departed the wheel aboard separate vessels, heading toward Mandalore where they would reunite properly and establish their operations. Behind them, sensors from Republic intelligence, Separatist spies, and other less identifiable observers tracked their movements with intense interest. In his meditation chamber on Coruscant, Master Yoda felt a disturbance in the Force, ripples suggesting futures branching in unprecedented directions. The X-Men represented something new, something the Force itself seemed uncertain how to accommodate. Whether that newness would heal the galaxy's wounds or create new ones, even his 900 years of wisdom could not determine. And in the deepest shadows, where the dark side concentrated its malevolent attention, Darth Sidious smiled behind his public mask of Supreme Chancellor Palpatine. Variables were dangerous, yes. But they also created opportunities for those wise enough to exploit them. The Clone Wars had just become far more interesting. The Battle of Kamino erupted without warning, a massive Separatist assault on the cloning facilities that produced the Republic's entire military force. General Grievous commanded the operation personally, his fleet of warships descending through the ocean world's perpetual storms while aquatic assault craft deployed beneath the waves. If Kamino fell, the Republic's ability to replace clone casualties would be crippled, potentially ending the war through attrition. The X-Men had been on Mandalore for less than a week when the emergency transmission arrived. The Republic was requesting assistance from anyone capable of contributing to Kamino's defense, Jedi, mercenaries, neutral systems, even the X-Men whose powers might make the difference between victory and catastrophic defeat. "We're not Republic soldiers," Eric stated flatly as the team gathered in their temporary base, a fortified compound provided by Clan Vizsla in exchange for technical assistance Hank had provided. "Kamino produces clone slaves. Why would we defend that atrocity?" "Because thousands of clones are stationed there," Xavier countered. "Sentient beings who will die if we refuse assistance. Their origin doesn't diminish their right to survival, Eric. You of all people should understand that. I understand that saving them perpetuates the system that creates them. We should be destroying the cloning facilities, not defending them. That's genocide, Jean said sharply. The clones on Kamino include children, cadets in training, barely old enough to hold blasters. You'd condemn them for circumstances they didn't choose. Storm intervened before the argument could escalate. The question isn't whether the clone army is moral, we all agree it's not. The question is whether we allow thousands of beings to die while we debate philosophy. I say we defend Kamino, then advocate for the clones' rights afterward. Dead beings have no rights at all. Scott nodded. Tactical assessment agrees. If we want credibility with either faction or independence to operate freely, we demonstrate capability and principle. Defending beings under attack, regardless of their origin, aligns with XMen values. Logan cracked his knuckles, adamantium claws sliding out briefly. Finally, some action. I've been itching for a real fight since we got here. Plus, the Kaminoans are supposed to have advanced genetic technology. Hank might learn something useful about dimensional travel from their cloning techniques. That's remarkably pragmatic thinking, Logan, Hank observed wryly. And yes, access to Kaminoan genetic libraries could provide insights. Their understanding of DNA manipulation exceeds anything on Earth by orders of magnitude. Rogue remained uncertain. Y'all are really okay with this? Fightin' in somebody else's war. We're not fighting their war, Xavier said gently. We're protecting innocence. The distinction matters, Rogue. If we refuse to act when we have power to prevent suffering, we betray everything the X-Men represent. The vote was 5-2, Xavier, Jean, Storm, Scott, and Hank advocating intervention, Eric and Rogue opposed. But even Eric, despite his objections, prepared for combat. He would not abandon his teammates, even when disagreeing with their choices. Logan simply shrugged. Democracy's great and all, but when people are dying, you act first and vote later. Let's move. Kamino's cloning facilities rose from the planet's endless ocean on massive stilts, technological cities floating above perpetual storms. The Separatist assault came from above and below simultaneously, Grievous fleet bombarding from orbit while Trident-class assault ships deployed beneath the waves, their droid armies designed for aquatic combat. The X-Men arrived aboard a Mandalorian transport. Pre-Vizsla had provided the vessel and pilots, intrigued by the opportunity to observe these mutants in genuine combat. As they descended through Kamino's turbulent atmosphere, the scale of the battle became apparent. Republic Venator-class star destroyers exchanged fire with Separatist frigates while starfighters weaved between capital ships in deadly ballet. Below, clone troopers fought desperately to hold the cloning facilities against wave after wave of aqua droids. X-Men, this is Jedi General Shock T, the communication crackled. Your assistance is appreciated, though unexpected. The primary cloning facility is under direct assault. We're holding but barely. Any support you can provide. We're on it, Scott transmitted. Storm, can you affect the weather conditions? Make it harder for Separatist air forces to operate? Aurora closed her eyes, her consciousness expanding outward to embrace Kamino's massive storm systems. The planet's weather was violent, chaotic, but ultimately just another atmospheric system responding to heat, pressure, and electromagnetic forces. She'd commanded hurricanes on Earth, Kamino's storms were simply larger. Her eyes turned pure white as she seized control. The perpetual storm intensified dramatically, winds increasing from severe to catastrophic. Lightning, directed by Storm's will, began striking Separatist vessels with impossible accuracy. Vulture droids attempting to strafe clone positions found themselves torn apart by wind shears that exceeded their structural tolerances. The ocean below churned with fury as Aurora summoned waterspouts that caught Trident assault ships and crushed them with hydrodynamic force. By the Force. Shock Ti's voice carried awe. She's weaponizing the entire planetary weather system. But Storm's impressive display was only the opening move. Magneto extended his consciousness, his magnetic senses embracing every metallic object within range. The Separatist fleet was a bounty, starship hulls, droid components, weapon systems, all responding to his will as easily as breathing. He started subtly. "Come on, you mechanical bastards." Logan roared, his claws removing a super battle droid's head with casual violence. "I've fought Sentinels tougher than you." Jean provided support through telekinesis, creating barriers that deflected blaster fire while simultaneously crushing droids with focused gravitational pressure. Her powers had grown since arriving in this galaxy, whether through adaptation or the Force's influence, she couldn't say. But she could feel the lives around her with unprecedented clarity, clone troopers fighting with desperate courage, Kaminoan civilians terrified for their survival, and the X-Men themselves, each mind a brilliant flame of determination. Rogue had initially hesitated, terrified of accidentally absorbing clone troopers in close combat. But Jean's telepathic guidance and Storm's earlier encouragement had given her confidence. She flew through the corridors, flight powers permanently absorbed from Ms. Marvel years ago, striking droids with superhuman strength while carefully avoiding skin contact with allies. Her enhanced invulnerability meant blaster bolts merely staggered her rather than causing serious injury. Hank fought with brutal efficiency that belied his gentle nature. His superhuman agility allowed him to dodge incoming fire while his enhanced strength tore droids apart with bare hands. His scientific mind analyzed enemy tactics in real time, predicting attack patterns and advising clone commanders through his comm unit. "Commander, 3 Aqua droids breaching Section 7 through thermal vents," Hank transmitted while simultaneously dismembering a droideka. "Recommend sealing bulkheads and flooding that section. The droids are aquatic but their weapon systems aren't waterproof." The clone commander implemented Hank's suggestion immediately. The tactical value of having a genius intellect analyzing battlefield conditions in real time was extraordinary. Professor Xavier remained aboard the Mandalorian transport. His telepathy coordinating the entire X-Men operation with perfect precision. He was the team's neural network, linking their actions into seamless cooperation. When Storm needed to know where lightning strikes would be most effective, Xavier provided targeting data from clone troopers' observations. When Scott needed to avoid hitting Republic forces with his optic beams, Xavier's telepathy ensured precise awareness of friendly positions. But Xavier's telepathy also detected something disturbing, minds in the battle that felt wrong. Not droid artificial intelligence, but organic consciousness twisted by something dark and malevolent. Sith, perhaps, or beings corrupted by the dark side. They lurked at the battle's edges, observing, waiting. "Team, be cautious," Xavier projected. Were being watched by hostile Force users. "They're analyzing our capabilities." On his command ship, General Grievous observed the battle's turning point with cold calculation. The X-Men were too effective, their powers too versatile, their coordination too precise. The assault was failing not because of superior Republic forces but because 7 beings from another dimension were systematically dismantling his entire strategy. "Recall all forces," Grievous ordered, his mechanical voice devoid of emotion. "We've gathered sufficient data. Inform Count Dooku that the mutants are more dangerous than anticipated. Conventional tactics will not succeed against them." The Separatist fleet began withdrawing, their retreat covered by sacrificial droid fighters. Storm continued harrying them with lightning and violent winds until they jumped to hyperspace, disappearing in flashes of pseudo-motion. The Battle of Kamino was over. The cloning facilities stood intact, thousands of clone lives preserved, and the Republic's military production capability secured. All because the X-Men had intervened. In the aftermath, as medics treated wounded clones and engineers assessed damage, Shock T approached Professor Xavier. The Togruta Jedi Master's expression mixed gratitude with profound concern. "You saved Kamino, Professor Xavier. Thousands owe you their lives. But I must be honest, your team's power is terrifying. What you accomplished here, 7 individuals turning the tide of a major military engagement. It challenges everything we understand about warfare and Force capabilities." Xavier met her gaze steadily. We're not your enemies, Master Shak T. We're simply beings trying to survive in circumstances we didn't choose. Today we defended innocence. Tomorrow we'll do the same, regardless of which faction is threatened. And if defending innocence requires opposing the Republic? Shak T asked quietly. Then we'll oppose the Republic, Xavier replied without hesitation. Our loyalty is to principles, not governments. If that makes us dangerous in your eyes, so be it. But we will not apologize for refusing to be weapons for anyone's political agenda. The Jedi Master nodded slowly. The Council will want to speak with you. What happened here today will echo across the galaxy. The X-Men are no longer unknown variables, you're proven combatants with capabilities that rival entire military divisions. As the X-Men regrouped aboard their transport, the team's mood was complex. They'd saved lives, prevented a catastrophic defeat, demonstrated their values through action. But they'd also revealed their full capabilities to multiple factions who would now view them with increased interest, and increased threat assessment. Eric stood at the viewport, watching Kamino recede as they departed. We just chose a side, Charles, whether you admit it or not. By defending the Republic's cloning facilities, we've made enemies of the Separatists and proven our value to Republic leadership. They'll never let us remain neutral now. We defended innocence, Xavier insisted. That's not choosing sides, it's maintaining principles. Principles that happen to align with Republic interests, Eric countered. The Separatists won't see the distinction. Neither will anyone else. Storm joined them at the viewport. Does it matter? We did what was right. If that creates complications, we'll deal with them. We're X-Men. Complications are what we do. Logan grunted agreement while cleaning blood and machine oil from his claws. Kid's got a point. We've never worried about making enemies before. Why start now? But as their transport jumped to hyperspace, Professor Xavier couldn't shake the feeling that Eric was correct. They'd crossed a threshold, moved from observers to participants. The Clone Wars would no longer be something happening around them, it would be something they were part of, for better or worse. And in the shadows, those who orchestrated this conflict watched with great interest. The X-Men had revealed themselves. Now came the truly dangerous part, deciding what to do with beings who possessed such power and refused to be controlled. The game had changed. The pieces were moving into positions no one could fully predict. And in a galaxy at war, unpredictability meant either salvation or destruction. The summons arrived 3 days after Kamino, a formal request from the Jedi Council for the X-Men to return to Coruscant. It was phrased diplomatically, almost deferentially, but Xavier's telepathy detected the undercurrents, concern, uncertainty, and the subtle pressure of beings accustomed to authority who suddenly faced variables they couldn't control. The X-Men debated the summons for hours. Eric advocated refusal, arguing that answering would establish precedent of responding to governmental demands. Logan supported going, if only to tell the Jedi face-to-face that the X-Men weren't anyone's servants. Storm and Jean felt they owed the Jedi at least a conversation after the Republic's assistance. Scott and Hank wanted access to Jedi archives for research purposes. Rogue abstained, still uncertain about their role in this galaxy. Xavier made the final call, they would go, but as independent agents, not supplicants. The Jedi Temple's council chamber felt different this time. The assembled masters, some holographic, others physically present, regarded the X-Men with expressions that mixed respect and wariness. Master Yoda sat in contemplative silence, his ancient eyes studying each mutant with an intensity that suggested he perceived layers others couldn't. Grateful, the Republic is, for your intervention at Kamino, Yoda began, his backward syntax somehow lending weight to his words. Saved, many lives were. But questions raised, your actions have. About your intentions, about your place in this galaxy, about what you ultimately seek. We seek to go home, Xavier said simply. Everything else is circumstance forcing our hand. We defended Kamino because sentient beings were threatened. We'd do the same regardless of faction or political alignment. Mace Windu leaned forward. Your abilities exceed anything we've encountered outside the Force. Professor Xavier's telepathy coordinates your team with perfect efficiency. Storm controls weather on planetary scales. Magneto manipulates metal with thought alone. Cyclops wields energy beams that destroy starfighters. Wolverine survives injuries that would kill any organic being. Jean Grey demonstrates both telepathy and telekinesis at levels rivaling Master-tier Jedi. And Beast's intellect analyzes situations faster than our tactical computers. 7 individuals accomplished what would normally require entire battle groups. You're wondering if we're threats, Eric stated flatly. Whether beings with our power can be trusted to remain neutral in your war. Wondering, we are, what you will do next, Yoda corrected gently. Power without purpose is dangerous. Purpose without wisdom is catastrophic. Both you possess, but which will guide your choices? Xavier sensed the deeper concern beneath Yoda's words. The Jedi were stretched impossibly thin, fighting a war they didn't fully understand while sensing darkness manipulating events from shadows. Variables like the X-Men, powerful, unpredictable, outside force paradigms, represented either salvation or another crisis in a galaxy already drowning in chaos. We're not Jedi, Storm said firmly. We don't serve the Republic or the Separatists. But we won't stand aside when we have power to prevent suffering. If that means intervening in your war occasionally, so be it. But on our terms, guided by our principles. And if your principles conflict with Republic interests? Obi-Wan asked, his tone more curious than confrontational. Then we'll conflict, Scott answered. We've fought governments on our own world when they violated fundamental rights. We'll do the same here if necessary. The council chamber fell into tense silence. Jean felt the force swirling around them, that vast, ancient energy field that permeated everything. It seemed almost agitated, as if their presence disturbed something fundamental about how this galaxy operated. Ki-Adi-Mundi spoke carefully. The Force binds all living things in the galaxy. Yet you 7 seem to exist partially outside its influence. Your powers stem from genetics rather than midichlorian symbiosis. This creates philosophical questions about the Force's nature and limitations. Maybe that's why we're here, Jean suggested, the thought crystallizing as she spoke. Not accident, but necessity. You've built an entire civilization around Force users and those without Force sensitivity. But we're something in between, powerful without being Force sensitive, capable of affecting your galaxy without fitting your established categories. Maybe the Force itself brought us here to challenge assumptions. Yoda's ears twitched with interest. A profound observation, young Jean Grey. The Force works in mysterious ways, and purpose often reveals itself slowly. But beware hubris, believing oneself chosen can lead to the dark side as easily as believing oneself righteous. Hank cleared his throat. Masters, might I request access to your scientific archives? My research into dimensional travel requires understanding hyperspace mechanics and theoretical physics at levels your civilization has mastered. In exchange, I'm happy to share Earth's scientific knowledge, limited though it may be by comparison. Knowledge for knowledge, Jocasta News hologram mused. The Jedi archivist seemed intrigued. An equitable exchange. The archives are open to you, Beast, though some restricted sections require council permission. One more thing, Logan growled. These clone troopers, they're sentient beings with thoughts, feelings, personalities. But they're bred for war, programmed for obedience. How is that different from slavery? The question hung in the air like an accusation. Several council members shifted uncomfortably. Obi-Wan's expression tightened with something that might have been shame. It isn't, Plo Koon admitted quietly. The clone army is a moral compromise the Jedi accepted under duress. The Separatist threat required military response, and the clones were available. We've rationalized it as necessary evil, but evil it remains. Then change it, Eric demanded, his voice carrying the weight of someone who'd survived humanity's greatest atrocity. Recognize the clones as full citizens. Grant them rights, autonomy, choice. If the Republic claims moral superiority over the Separatists, demonstrate it through action rather than rhetoric. Mace Windu's jaw tightened. The Senate would never approve such legislation. The clones are military assets in Republic law. Changing that would require. Political will you apparently lack, Eric interrupted coldly. You command these clones in battle, send them to die for Republic interests, but won't advocate for their basic rights? This is exactly why I distrust institutions claiming noble purposes. When convenient, you're peacekeepers. When difficult, you're just politicians with lightsabers. Eric, Xavier's telepathic voice carried warning. We need them as allies, or at least not as enemies. I won't compromise on this, Charles. These Jedi claim moral authority while perpetuating slavery. If they won't address it, they're complicit, asterisk. The tension in the council chamber escalated dangerously. Storm stepped forward, her presence commanding attention without threatening. The X-Men fight for the oppressed and marginalized. On our world, that means mutants facing persecution. Here, that includes clone troopers denied basic rights. We'll assist the Republic when innocent lives are threatened, but we'll also advocate loudly for clone citizenship. If that makes us problematic allies, so be it. Yoda thumped his Jimmer stick against the floor, the sound cutting through rising tensions. Uncomfortable truths, you speak. Necessary, such voices are. Too easily, we Jedi justify compromises, telling ourselves circumstances permit exceptions to principles. Remind us of our failures, you do. Grateful for that reminder, we should be, even when painful. The ancient Jedi Master's admission shifted the chamber's atmosphere. Other council members nodded slowly, their expressions troubled but receptive. We'll bring the matter before the Senate, Obi-Wan promised. Advocate for clone rights legislation. I cannot guarantee success. Republic politics are complicated, and many systems profit from current arrangements. But we'll try. Your point is taken, and it's valid. Xavier felt Eric's magnetic aura settle slightly, though his ideological rival remained suspicious. The professor knew this pattern. Eric pushed aggressively until systems demonstrated willingness to change, then grudgingly accepted incremental progress while maintaining pressure for more. It was exhausting but often effective. There's one more issue, Jean said quietly. We felt something during our time here. Something dark. Minds twisted by malevolence, consciousness that radiates corruption. We encountered it at Kamino, observers watching the battle from the shadows. The council members exchanged glances heavy with unspoken knowledge. Finally, Mace Windu spoke. What you sensed was likely the dark side of the Force. The Jedi have long suspected Sith involvement in the Clone Wars orchestration. The Sith were our ancient enemies, thought extinct for a millennium. But recent evidence suggests they've returned, manipulating Republic and Separatist alike for purposes we don't fully understand. Let me investigate, Xavier offered. My telepathy operates differently than Force abilities. If there are hidden manipulators, I might detect them where Force users cannot. Dangerous, that path is, Yoda warned. The dark side corrupts subtly, seductively. Your telepathy might prove vulnerable to influences you cannot recognize. I've faced telepathic threats on Earth, beings who could rewrite reality with thought. I understand the dangers. Xavier's conviction was absolute. If someone is orchestrating this war, profiting from galactic suffering, they need to be exposed. Isn't that what Jedi stand for? Truth and justice. The Council deliberated through Force-enhanced silent communication, a coordination the X-Men could observe but not participate in. Finally, Yoda spoke. Assist us, you may, but cautiously. Share information you discover, but act not alone. The Sith are cunning beyond measure, patient beyond mortal comprehension. Underestimate them, and destroyed you will be. Rogue, who had been silent throughout the meeting, finally spoke. Y'all keep talking about Sith and dark side like we should know what that means. We don't. We're stumbling around blind in your galaxy, making decisions without understanding context. Maybe before we commit to hunting mysterious evil force users, someone should explain what exactly we're dealing with. It was a fair point. The Jedi had assumed the X-Men understood force dynamics, light versus dark, the philosophical frameworks that defined galactic civilization for millennia. But the mutants were genuinely ignorant, powerful but naive about this universe's fundamental nature. Obi-Wan stood. Then let us remedy that. X-Men, if you'll accept, I propose several days of cultural exchange. We'll explain the Force, Jedi history, and the Sith threat. You'll share your experiences, your abilities' nature, and your own philosophies. Understanding breeds cooperation. And we need cooperation if we're to face the challenges ahead. Acceptable, Xavier agreed. Knowledge exchange benefits everyone. As the formal council session concluded, the X-Men were escorted to guest quarters within the Jedi Temple. The building itself was a marvel, ancient architecture housing modern technology, meditation gardens alongside training facilities, a place where warrior monks cultivated both martial skill and spiritual enlightenment. That evening, gathered in their shared common room, the X-Men assessed their situation. We're in deeper than we intended, Scott observed. Defending Kamino made us visible. Now we're known quantities to Republic, Separatists, and apparently some hidden Sith manipulators. Our hope of remaining neutral observers just evaporated. Was it ever realistic? Jean asked. Power this significant attracts attention. We were naive to think we could stay uninvolved. Logan sharpened his claws idly against a whetstone that wouldn't damage adamantium but satisfied his need for familiar routines. Question is, what do we do now? We gonna hunt Sith? Fight for the Republic? Try to revolutionize their government? Or keep looking for a way home and ignore the galaxy burning around us? We do what X-Men have always done, Storm said firmly. We stand for principles, protect the vulnerable, and challenge injustice wherever we find it. This galaxy isn't Earth, but suffering is universal. If we can prevent it, we should. Even if it costs us our way home. Rogue challenged. What if helping them means we never get back? Never see our own world again? The question silenced the room. Xavier's telepathy sensed each teammate's conflict, the tension between heroic duty and survival, between intervening in others' conflicts and prioritizing their own needs. We don't abandon our search for home, Xavier said finally. Hank continues research with Jedi assistance. But while we're here, we make a difference. Every outcome anticipated. Except this. 7 beings from beyond the Force's reach, powerful enough to disrupt carefully laid plans, principled enough to resist manipulation. They were anomalies, variables that needed to be controlled, eliminated, or turned to his purposes. The Sith Lord smiled in the darkness. Challenges were what made victory meaningful. And these X-Men, for all their power, understood nothing about the true nature of the game being played. They would learn. Or they would die. Either outcome served the dark side's ultimate purpose. The Clone Wars continued, battles fought across 1,000 systems, and hidden within the chaos, plots within plots unfolded. The X-Men had arrived in a galaxy at war, but they didn't yet understand the war's true nature, that it was never about Republic versus Separatist, democracy versus tyranny, or even light versus dark. It was about power. Who wielded it, who controlled it, and what they were willing to sacrifice to obtain it. The Force had endured for eons, guiding civilizations, shaping destinies. But mutation cared nothing for the Force's ancient patterns. Evolution operated by different rules, and the collision between Force and mutation would reshape the galaxy in ways neither side could predict. The endgame approached, pieces moving into position, and the X-Men stood at the center of a conflict they were only beginning to comprehend. Their choices in the coming days would echo across galactic history, legends born from dimensional accident, heroes forged in the fires of an alien war, mutants who proved that power existed beyond the Force's dominion. The galaxy would remember them. For salvation or destruction, honor or tragedy, the Force itself seemed uncertain which destiny awaited. But the X-Men had never relied on destiny. They created their own future through choice, action, and unshakable belief that individual lives mattered more than cosmic plans. And in a galaxy of trillions, that belief might be the most dangerous weapon of all. The months that followed would become legend. The X-Men established themselves as a force unlike any the galaxy had witnessed, neither Jedi nor Sith, neither Republic nor Separatist, but something entirely new. They operated from Mandalorian space, maintaining independence while intervening when their principles demanded. Their reputation grew with each mission, liberating slave colonies where both factions had failed, mediating conflicts that threatened civilian populations, and consistently challenging the moral compromises that defined the Clone Wars. Professor Xavier's investigation into Sith manipulation bore fruit. His telepathy, operating outside Force paradigms, detected patterns the Jedi had missed, financial networks connecting seemingly opposed factions, communication channels suggesting coordination between Republic and Separatist leadership, and eventually, the presence of a dark consciousness embedded deep within the Republic itself. When Xavier finally identified Supreme Chancellor Palpatine as the hidden Sith Lord orchestrating both sides of the war, the revelation shattered galactic politics. But exposure didn't mean victory. Darth Sidious was ancient, cunning, and powerful beyond measure. The confrontation that followed drew every faction into chaos, Jedi fighting to preserve the Republic, Separatists confused by their leader's true allegiance, clone troopers torn between programming and awakening autonomy, and the X-Men standing at the center, refusing to let a Sith Lord reshape the galaxy unchallenged. Magneto's power proved decisive in ways even he hadn't anticipated. When Sidious activated Order 66, the protocol that would turn clone troopers against their Jedi generals, Eric's electromagnetic manipulation disrupted the inhibitor chips controlling clone behavior. Millions of clones suddenly remembered their suppressed personalities, remembered the Jedi who had fought beside them, and made their own choices. Some still followed orders. Many refused. The Sith's perfect plan fractured because mutation could affect technology in ways the Force could not. Storm's weather controls saved entire worlds during the final battles, creating atmospheric shields that protected civilian populations from orbital bombardment. Cyclops' tactical brilliance coordinated Republic and reluctant Separatist forces into unified resistance against the Sith threat. Wolverine fought alongside clone commandos in brutal close combat, his adamantium claws proving that some weapons transcended galactic technology. Jean Grey's growing connection to the Force, a hybrid of mutant power and mystical energy, allowed her to duel Sith assassins with abilities that confused both sides. Beast's scientific genius exposed the financial conspiracies funding the war, collapsing the economic foundations of Sidious's empire. And Rogue, overcoming her fear of her absorption powers, became the team's secret weapon, able to temporarily gain Force abilities by touching Jedi, then use those abilities with mutant-enhanced effectiveness. The final confrontation occurred on Coruscant, in the Senate building where Palpatine had ruled through deception for decades. The X-Men stood alongside Jedi Masters, loyal clone commanders, and even former Separatists who recognized their manipulation. The battle that followed would be remembered as the day mutation challenged the Sith and proved that power existed beyond the Force's ancient duality. Darth Sidious fell, not to Jedi valor or clone loyalty, but to a coordinated assault that combined Force abilities with mutant powers in ways the Sith Lord couldn't predict or counter. Xavier's telepathy disrupted his concentration while Magneto tore apart his cybernetic enhancements. Storm's lightning overwhelmed his Force defenses while Cyclops' optic beams destroyed his escape routes. Jean Grey, channeling both mutant telekinesis and newfound Force sensitivity, shielded allies from his dark side attacks. And when the Emperor finally stood vulnerable, it was a clone trooper, Commander Cody, freed from his inhibitor chip and choosing his own destiny, who fired the shot that ended the Sith's reign. In the aftermath, the galaxy began its long reconstruction. The Republic reformed into something more representative, acknowledging the Separatists' legitimate grievances while establishing frameworks for peaceful resolution. The clone troopers, now recognized as full citizens with rights and autonomy, chose their own paths, some remaining soldiers, others pursuing civilian lives they'd never imagined possible. The Jedi Order, humbled by their failure to detect Sidious's deception, opened themselves to new philosophies and acknowledged that the Force wasn't the only path to power and wisdom. And Hank McCoy, working with Jedi scholars and Kaminoan geneticists, finally cracked the mathematics of dimensional travel. The X-Men stood in a laboratory on Kamino, surrounded by technology that merged Earth science, Jedi mysticism, and galactic engineering. Before them, a dimensional portal shimmered with unstable energy, a gateway home, if it held long enough for passage. "We did what we came to do," Xavier said quietly, his wheelchair hovering at the portal's edge. "We survived, adapted, and perhaps left this galaxy a little better than we found it." "We started a revolution," Eric corrected, though his tone carried satisfaction rather than criticism. "The clones are free. The Sith are defeated. Systems are reconsidering power structures that stood for millennia. Not bad for 7 mutants who arrived by accident. Are we sure about going back?" Rogue asked, her voice uncertain. "We got friends here now. People who respect us, a galaxy that knows what we can do. Back on Earth, we're still fighting for basic acceptance." "Earth is home," Storm replied firmly. "No matter how complicated, no matter how difficult, it's where we belong. This galaxy has the Jedi, the Reformed Republic. And countless beings fighting for justice. They'll continue the work we started." Logan extended his claws one final time, studying the adamantium that had proven indestructible even in an alien universe. "I'm gonna miss the Mandalorians. First group outside the X-Men who appreciated what I bring to the table. But the kid's right, we got our own fights waitin'. Scott checked his visor's settings, ensuring optimal control for the journey home. "The Republic's offering us honorary citizenship, recognition as heroes of the Clone Wars. We could stay, establish the X-Men as a galactic organization." "Tempting," Jean admitted. "I've learned so much about the Force, about how my powers can grow beyond what I thought possible. But Professor Xavier's right, we have responsibilities on Earth. Mutants who need guidance, students who depend on us, and a world that still fears what it doesn't understand." Hank made final adjustments to the dimensional portal stabilizers. "The mathematics are elegant. This galaxy's hyperspace technology operates on principles Earth physicists would consider impossible. But it works, and I've adapted it to create a bridge home. We have approximately 12 minutes before the energy matrix collapses." Master Yoda approached, leaning on his Jimmer stick, accompanied by Obi-Wan, Shaak-Ti, and Commander Cody. The Jedi Master's ancient eyes reflected wisdom and something that might have been sadness. "Leave us, you must," Yoda said simply. "But remembered, you will be. The galaxy is changed by your presence, your choices, your courage. The Force guided you here for purpose, I believe. Fulfilled that purpose, you have." Obi-Wan stepped forward, extending his hand to Professor Xavier. "You taught us that power exists beyond the Force, that strength comes in forms we never imagined. You challenged our assumptions, pushed us to be better, and ultimately saved the Republic from destroying itself. Whatever your future holds, know that you'll always have allies here." Commander Cody, no longer just CC 2224 but a free being with chosen identity, saluted. "You gave us something we never thought possible, choice. Every clone who walks free, who pursues dreams beyond warfare, owes you a debt we can never fully repay. Thank you." The farewell was bittersweet. The X-Men had formed genuine connections in this galaxy, friendships with Jedi, respect for Mandalorians, gratitude from freed clones, and the knowledge that their presence had genuinely changed galactic civilization for the better. If you ever find your way back, Ahsoka Tano said, the young Padawan's eyes bright with emotion, you'll always have a place here. The galaxy could use more heroes like you. One by one, the X-Men passed through the portal. Storm went first, her white hair streaming as she stepped into dimensional energy. Scott followed, his visor's glow disappearing into the light. Rogue hesitated, then flew through with determination. Hank documented final readings before leaping through with acrobatic grace. Logan paused, gave the assembled witnesses a final nod, then walked through as casually as if returning from a grocery run. Jean embraced Ahsoka briefly, whispered something the others couldn't hear, then joined her teammates. Eric and Charles remained, the two who had defined the X-Men's ideological foundations, who had debated philosophy across decades and galaxies. Thank you for not destroying this civilization when they frustrated you, Xavier said with gentle humor. Thank you for not compromising our principles to please authority figures, Eric replied with equal warmth. You were right about some things, Charles. The Jedi weren't villains, just flawed beings trying their best. But I was right too, systems needed to be challenged, forced to change. Perhaps that's always been our strength, your idealism and my pragmatism balancing each other. Perhaps, Xavier agreed. Shall we go home, old friend? After you, Charles. After you. The two men, rivals, friends, brothers in every way that mattered, passed through the dimensional portal together. The energy matrix collapsed behind them with spectacular luminescence, sealing the gateway between universes. In the laboratory, the Jedi and clones stood in silence, processing what they'd witnessed. 7 beings from beyond the Force, who had arrived by accident and changed everything through choice, principle, and unshakable determination. The Force works in mysterious ways, Obi-Wan murmured. Indeed, Yoda agreed. But perhaps, not the Force alone. Other powers, other destinies exist. Reminded of that, we have been forgotten, we must not. The Clone Wars continued in the X-Men's absence, but their trajectory had fundamentally shifted. The Sith were defeated, the clones were free, and the galaxy understood that power existed beyond the Force's duality. Civilizations would build on the foundations the X-Men established, creating a future where beings were judged by their choices rather than their connection to mystical energy fields. And somewhere across dimensional barriers, in a mansion in Westchester County, New York, 7 mutants materialized in Cerebro's chamber, home again after the most impossible journey imaginable. They brought with them knowledge of a galaxy where the Force bound all things, where civilizations spanned thousands of worlds, and where 7 mutants had proven that evolution could challenge ancient powers. The X-Men had gone to the stars and returned changed, stronger, wiser, and carrying the certainty that no matter where they traveled, no matter what universe they inhabited, their mission remained constant, to protect the vulnerable, challenge injustice, and prove that beings with power had responsibility to use it wisely. The Star Wars galaxy would never forget the mutants who arrived when needed most and departed leaving legacy of freedom, choice, and hope. And the Force itself, ancient and patient, seemed to whisper a truth across dimensional barriers, that mutation and destiny were not opposed but complementary, that power took infinite forms, and that sometimes the greatest heroes came from the most unexpected origins. The X-Men were home. But the stars would always remember. May the Force be with you. More stories await.